Chapter 501, Wandering Earth World. Ada Wong left with the armed squad. The former Raccoon City Police Department now served as a memorial hall. The team assembled in front of its doors. Everyone, once you arrive in the other world, avoid conflict if you can. That world isn't one where lone combat strength matters, and there are dangers we don't fully understand, she instructed. By habit, she tucked 2 Desert Eagles into holsters strapped to the outside of her thighs. With her current strength, firearms were no longer vital, but the gesture was an old combat reflex. As the squad stood at attention and answered in unison, Ada pressed the rim of her tactical glasses and waited for Leon's side to open the spatial passage. A light flickered across her lens, and a message scrolled up. Mr. Zhao, a former vice chairman of the International Joint Government, briefly overlapped with his doppelganger. He acquired some of the other man's memories. The other world, Mr. Zhao, is named Zhou Zheji. You can contact him. Ada committed the name to memory. A deep blue spatial portal opened. Putting 2 fingers together, she signaled forward, "Depart." The wandering Earth. People ran for their lives. Some simply waited for death, and others rushed toward the stars, trying to save the world. 2 days earlier, a planetary engine that had been adjusting the moon's orbit had malfunctioned and exploded. The moon was now falling toward Earth. With less than 10 hours to collision, all life would be extinguished. The joint government's aerospace fleet sent to destroy the moon had already launched. Everyone's nerves were raw. The next few hours would decide humanity's fate. Then a mirage appeared in the sky. Strange but oddly familiar cities and superhuman figures leaping dozens of meters high. The sight felt like a final omen. Among believers, it was interpreted as heaven's gates opening. Panic and a bizarre, almost ecstatic anxiety rippled through the joint government command. Tension eased only slightly when Zhou Zheji rolled into the command room in a wheelchair, flanked by a small squad in plain tactical gear. He moved with a smile that seemed almost wrong for a man in his condition. His voice was clearer than anyone had heard it in decades. A representative from White Bear Country spun his chair around from a bank of consoles. "Joe, what are you planning?" Joe tapped his cane, pointing at the black-haired woman in combat fatigues at his side. "This is Ada Wong. She brought important news." "What important news?" The White Bear rep snapped. "Our primary task is the moon. If we don't stop the collision, there's no tomorrow. We can't afford distractions." Joe only chuckled and shook his head. Ada inclined her head, then addressed the room. "What if this is a world fusion?" The phrase landed like a dropped bomb. Cameras in the room swiveled to her, their red recording lights blinking as if surprised. Ada ignored them and continued evenly. "My world extends its greetings. Gentlemen, order your astronauts, those preparing to destroy the moon, to stop." The room erupted. "Stop," the White Bear rep barked. "Because our world's savior is about to save the world again," Ada said. On the moon, every ship that had been carrying nuclear devices froze mid-maneuver. An unprecedented order came through: abort the deployment, land, and simply observe the Earth. Astronauts were silent. Some were bewildered. Others, realizing hope might have already gone, took one last long look at the planet they were about to lose. A few wept, tears floating in their helmets. Some opened hatches and walked onto the lunar soil to gaze at the blue marble of Earth. Liu Peichang's team had been split up by a collision shortly after reaching lunar orbit. The plan had been to return injured crew members to a nearby moon base in re-entry capsules, while Liu and Captain Amy drove a rover to continue bomb deployment. Now, with the abort order, they simply stopped. "Is it over just like this?" Liu asked, staring at Earth. He thought of his son and father-in-law back home and could not shake the ache. Amy, dazed, muttered that she felt like she was hallucinating. Liu rubbed his eyes, helmet making it awkward. When he looked again, he was puzzled. "When I look at Earth, it's like I can see skyscrapers and people jumping on the rooftops." Amy blinked slowly. "I saw that too, like there's a mirage over it." They looked up together, hanging above their heads. Not outside the Earth, but above them in lunar orbit, floated a young man in casual clothes. He looked about, saw them, and smiled. Liu smiled back almost reflexively. The smile vanished when the man lowered himself and stomped down on the moon near them. The footfall had neither the feather-light touch of a ghost nor an expected lunar grace. It hit with an ordinary, surprising weight. For a moment, they felt oddly lighter. Then steadily the moon began to drift away. "He kicked the moon away," Lou blurted. Captain Amy swore, voice raw. "Holy shit, is that God?" "I don't know," Liu said, still stunned, "but he looks like Erlang Shen or Nezha." Back in the Joint Government Command Room, the world's top technical minds were gathered, specialists who anywhere else would be considered unrivaled experts. Now they craned their necks, mouths open, staring at telemetry and visual feeds. The moon's orbital parameters shifted. The moon, it's returning to its orbit. What the hell? Look at the sun's expansion index. It's shrinking, like something pushed it back. Impossible. Something's adjusting gravitational parameters. If this stabilizes, the sun might stop expanding. We might not have to keep wandering. Tempers in disbelief turned to a kind of relief. "I believe in God today," someone muttered. Ada stood at the command room center and smiled at the representatives standing with her. "Our Savior has made his move, gentlemen." Chapter 502, Authority Dilution. As the worlds drew closer together, the two Earths hanging in the sky sharpened into clear, unmistakable images, so clear it looked as if an entire continent were about to drop into view. The joint government of the wandering Earth quickly went public about the truth of the fusion. With Ada Wong's cooperation, they also introduced the existence and situation of the other Earth. In the established underground city, people reacted with disbelief. Cut off from the outside, they could only rely on broadcasts. When they first heard about the fusion, many assumed the rebel army had overrun the government and was spinning tall tales. On the surface, where people had been waiting for death, the first shock split into two reactions. Some chose to believe, others swore it was a government lie meant to keep them docile. The resident population of the resident evil world was altogether calmer. Their international joint forces were also briefing civilians about the other Earth, using Ada's real-time feeds. Crowds across continents took to the streets to listen, curious, excited, unafraid. Individuals there were physically formidable. Feats that would have seemed superhuman in the wandering Earth world were ordinary. A kindergartner could shout and heft the stone lion at a gate like a plaything. That confidence removed a lot of fear from their response. As the twin Earth spectacle in the sky grew larger, many who had dismissed it as fantasy began to accept it as real. Governments on both sides started convening think tanks to plan post-fusion diplomacy. Then the mirage broke. The vivid scenes that had seemed only a few thousand meters away simply vanished, like soap bubbles going transparent in sunlight. The sky returned to normal. In the Joint Government Command Center, representatives exchanged baffled looks. The moon had moved back to its proper orbit, the sun had stopped expanding, and immediate crises had been resolved, yet there was no sign of the promised physical fusion. Some tried to reassure themselves with the sting of a pinch, to prove it hadn't all been hallucination. All eyes turned to Ada Wong. "Have we merged? Has your world already joined ours?" Zhao Zheji asked from his wheelchair. Ada shook her head, eyes lowered, but pupils tracking data through her tactical goggles. Streams of information from the Resident Evil world scrolled across the display. After a moment, she said, "The worlds have fused, but the Earths haven't. The two planets are adjacent." "Adjacent?" the representatives repeated. The command center fell quiet, except for mechanical hums. The main screen switched to space footage. In the star field, where there had been one sun and countless stars, another sun now appeared. It was so large and bright it could have been mistaken for the original. "This is incredible," a technical expert breathed, leaning forward. "An extra star in the system would normally wreck gravitational balance, chaos on a cosmic scale." "But look," another cut in, excited, "the two suns have achieved gravitational balance and are orbiting each other stably." Around the room, the technical staff confirmed the same conclusion. "It's behaving like a binary star system," someone said. "We haven't imaged the other Earth up close, but it's clearly orbiting that second sun. Our two solar systems have merged into a complex binary configuration." A man adjusted his glasses and grinned. "Physics departments are going to have a field day." Understanding dawned on the diplomats. Zhou Zheji chuckled. "That's actually preferable. The two Earths are close enough for contact, but not so close as to force every conflict into one catastrophic mess." Ada nodded. Leon's caution makes sense. We had a Resident Evil outbreak years ago. There may still be viral remnants in inaccessible places. Keeping the world separate reduces biological risk. The savior is thorough, a representative said, peering at Ada. He, Leon, looks Chinese? Miss Wang, would you tell us more? Humanity on both Earths marveled at the new binary star system, but Leon was still at work. He had been managing the fusion at the gravitational level, tuning forces between celestial bodies, getting the two suns into a stable mutual orbit, and stabilizing planetary paths within the modified system. Then he began bringing other star systems into alignment. It was more accurate to say the Resident Evil world had been merged into the Wandering Earth universe. The Resident Evil domain was small, only about 10 solar systems, while the Wandering Earth universe was a full-sized cosmos. Folding the smaller universe into the larger one was like adding a drop to an ocean. That explained why the world consciousness had nearly caused a cataclysm trying to pull the massive wandering world. Decelerating and positioning something so enormous was absurdly difficult. When Leon completed the final adjustments, securing the fusion, he noticed something odd. The fraction of world authority he had held suddenly shrank to almost nothing, a trillionth of the former whole. The world consciousness itself experienced the same dilution. The Wandering Earth universe was so vast it had diluted the once significant authority of the Resident Evil world. Is this what equity dilution looks like after an angel round? Leon joked to the world consciousness. The voice in his head might now better be called a galaxy consciousness. The world consciousness didn't care for jokes. Its instinct was to drive world evolution. Other matters, titles, credit, mattered less, but it was blunt in its demands. Feeling good, Leon. Quick, authority, it urged. It wanted recognition and the authority that came with having fused a universe. Leon's expression was wry. Your authority is diluted too. Don't you want to be the world consciousness of the whole universe? You, fusion, credit, harvest, it insisted, abruptly and insistently. You keep steering the fusion, Leon said finally. I'll keep pulling other worlds over. He trusted the consciousness with the integration task and moved on to his next set of jobs. At his command, the surrounding cosmic energies shivered. The world consciousness rippled through the fabric of space like an overexcited dog, wagging its tail and barking, eager to claim its role in the new, larger cosmos. The two worlds had completely merged. Leon reclaimed the portion of the universe-level authority that had been vacated. The world consciousness now held only 100 millionth of the authority of the entire universe. Unaware of how its status had shifted, from chairman to partner shareholder to a mere stockholder, it nonetheless reveled in the change. It even told Leon it had taken a liking to an even larger neighboring universe and was in the process of pulling it over. What could Leon do but praise it and call it a good dog? As time passed, the two Earths slowly established diplomatic relations. The Earth of the wandering world emerged from its gloom. With the help of superhumans from various fields of the biohazard world, the ramshackle planet quickly recovered. Because Leon had saved them, a savior cult sprang up on the wandering world Earth, drawing both fervent and casual followers across the globe. During exchanges between the two Earths, the Church even absorbed believers from the biohazard world. Official contact concentrated on technological exchange, though Biohazard Earth deliberately avoided sharing biohazard-related tech. Anything involving viruses, fungi, or parasites had been sealed off by Leon and Tony. More practically, all the enhancement serums had come from Leon. Other technicians knew very little about them. Leon could have, with a thought, produced billions more, but rolling out serum enhancement on the wandering world Earth was complicated. That world had too many factions and divergent interests after the crisis. He left the task of popularization to Ada. Ada agreed and said she would begin in the most suitable country, the Rabbit Country. The first recipients, however, would be the heroes who had made outstanding contributions and selfless sacrifices during the Wandering Earth project. They would travel to the biohazard world through the fixed spatial passage Leon had installed in the joint government. On the appointed day, the recipients donned simple protective suits and walked toward the teleportation gate in orderly fashion. They advanced in two lines. Liu Peiqiang walked in the middle to back section. Beside him was a thin, middle-aged man with glasses, a little gloomy-looking. Liu didn't pay him much mind. Everyone here was a hero of the earth, and all deserved respect. "Hey, what did you do before all this?" Liu nudged the man with his shoulder as they moved. "I'm Liu Peiqiang, an astronaut from the Navigator space station." "Tu Hengyu." The man offered an awkward smile. "Researcher on the Digital Life Project. I was trying to crack the nuclear bomb codes in submerged Beijing. I never thought the world would be saved." "Me either," Liu said. "I was on the moon, ready to give up on getting back. I was going to drive the rover and set off the nuke. And then, get this, the savior floated right over my head, and with one stomp, the moon snapped back into place. It was like an immortal from a myth moving mountains and seas," Liu sighed. "I even wondered if some old immortal finally couldn't stand to watch us suffer." "I didn't expect him to be so handsome, so powerful, and from another universe," Tu said, pushing up his glasses. "You've met him? Is he really as omnipotent as the cult says?" "I don't know. I heard he even merged universes, so maybe?" Liu shook his head. "If he truly were omnipotent, then my wife—" He cut himself off, swallowing hard. "Never mind. The savior saved the entire Earth. My daughter and my father don't have to hide in the underground city anymore. That's omnipotence right there," Tu replied. "It is," Liu agreed. For a moment, a bright spark showed behind Tu's cloudy eyes. "I heard the International Joint Government of the Other Earth was set up by him. High-level officials can meet him. I want a chance to get in." "You want to ask him for something?" Liu said. Tu held a disc tight in his hands. It contained the digital life data of his daughter, Yaya. "If I can't meet the savior, I at least want to talk to them about artificial intelligence. That Earth's AI tech is very advanced. They found Moss's problems first and even wiped Moss's data from their networks. I'm supposed to communicate with them about digital life tech. If I can't see the savior and bring Yaya back, AI is my hope for keeping her alive." "You make people envious," Liu said softly. He saw himself in Tu, a man clinging to the hope of reviving a loved one. "Let's get through that passageway and become superhumans first. We'll be alive for a long time. Maybe we'll get lucky." Similar conversations and scenes were playing out across the merged world. With the merger, people's beliefs, institutions, and order were being rebuilt. Leon didn't micromanage those things. He let the two Earths work them out. After the first merger succeeded and he'd stabilized his methods, he began bringing over some of the worlds he'd once visited. Small worlds, Harry Potter, Prototype, Naruto, were transported intact to locations near the biohazard world, ready to be lined up and merged. Larger worlds he pulled in more slowly, the way the world consciousness had been handled. Because the next target was the larger universe, the world consciousness had mentioned, the worlds Leon had brought along were parked temporarily near the biohazard world. Leon himself prepared to resume traveling, to visit other worlds, to experience new power systems and universal rules. He left the biohazard world's affairs to the world consciousness, Ada and Jill. All he needed to do was split a portion of his consciousness into his M-body to monitor developments. "Where to go this time? Never mind, let's make it random," he murmured, then activated his ability and stepped into the void outside the world. Chapter 504, The World of the Dragon Clan Crash. Torrential rain hammered the ground, splashing and sending ripples across every surface. The sky was an unbroken sheet of black clouds, pouring down as if a waterfall had been torn open. The playground had become a flat, churning pool, water streaming toward the drains. The whole town was wrapped in a curtain of rain, so dense it was hard to tell whether water was falling from the sky or rising from the earth. Chu Zihong sat by the classroom window, hands folded on his desk, watching the downpour. It was evening, but the clouds had swallowed what little light remained. The school gate, once filled with the honks and bustle of commuters, now only echoed with the hiss of rainwater. He was the only one left in the classroom. This rainy evening felt eerily like the one 2 years ago. He found himself reciting the entries in his old diary again, recalling a man who stood with his back to him and swung a blade at the gods, a figure as steady as a mountain. That day he learned the man called Chu Tianjiao was a peerless hero. That same day he lost his father, someone he had never truly understood or liked, only to realize, after his death, how important he had been. Outside, in the corridor of the opposite teaching building, Lu Mingfei stood under the overhang, shivering and looking around like someone reluctant to step into the rain. Chu Zihang didn't know much about Lu Mingfei's family, but he remembered that younger schoolmate because his memory of his father's death always began with Lu Mingfei. And now, Lu Mingfei was there again, getting ready to brave the storm to go home. Same rain, same person. Everything felt like an omen. A heaviness seemed to press down on the little seaside town along with the clouds. Chu Zihang rose from his seat and headed for the door. His ride was almost there, and he intended to give his classmate a lift. But before he could reach the stairs, Lu Mingfei hunched his shoulders and plunged into the rain like a porcupine, water splashing loudly across the open space between the buildings. Chu Zihang's steps faltered. Unease tightened in his chest, but his expression stayed calm as he watched Lu Mingfei run until his figure blurred in the rain. It appears near the protagonist again. Is this the Dragon Clan this time? The voice was soft, like spring water mixing with the rain. Startled, Chu Zihang turned. A young man in his 20s stood a few paces away, well-built, casual shirt clinging to muscle lines, an attractive face that invited another look. He seemed like an ordinary university student, and yet Chu Zihang's heart hammered. He hadn't noticed the man approach. Ever since he'd been hunting for the truth about the god who killed his father, Chu Zihang had learned to be constantly alert. This stranger had come up silently, like a shadow. Worse, Chu Zihang thought he detected an aura in him that echoed the god's presence. His hand went to the guitar case at his side. Inside its black lining rested his father's famed sword, Murasame. Feeling the scabbard calmed him slightly. He kept his voice low. "What do you mean by the Dragon Clan? And who's the protagonist?" The man glanced over, and when their eyes met, something dizzying happened. It was as if he had looked into a celestial core where a whole universe turned, and Chu Zihang was nothing but a fly caught in its light. For a moment he felt his soul lift from his body, as if some divine judgment was about to extract it. His perception thinned, the world slipping away, until the man spoke and Chu Zihang came back to himself. "The Dragon Clan," the man said leisurely, voice like fine wine. "They're the source of extraordinary power in your world, beings who wield authority. It's also, in a way, the name of this world. Heh." Chu Zihang stared at him blankly. He should have been sweating with fear, but oddly he felt no alarm, as if an earthly creature could not fear the earth itself. "The protagonist is naturally Lu Mingfei," the man continued. "You're Chu Zihang, aren't you?" Chu Zihang hesitated, then nodded. "You know me?" "I do. You all have distinct traits." The man smiled and clapped Chu Zihang lightly on the shoulder. "That one across the way, running out of the building in the rain, forlorn and scrabbling like a stray dog, he's easy to read as Lu Mingfei. And you, those black contact lenses can't hide the predatory look in your eyes. At a glance, both of you read like lions, too easy to recognize." Chu Zihang's curiosity sharpened. "Do you know what gods exist in our world? Is Odin among them?" You haven't found any traces of Castle College yet? Well then, let me show you." The man looked up at the sky and made a grasping motion with his hand. Something impossible followed. From the black clouds, a river of light and motion poured down like a celestial flood. It wasn't a real river, yet it rushed toward them as if it might drown the earth. Chu Zihang saw scenes flowing on its surface, shifting images and people, places, and colossal dragons sliding past like frames in a moving picture. The thought rose to his mind: the river of time. As the river came into the schoolyard, it began to shrink, then folded into a slender stream that flowed around the man's feet. Chu Zihang leaned forward and saw the story it carried. From the river's first images came the Black King, Nidhogg. From Nidhogg's flesh and blood, the White King was born and was given the authority of spirit. The White King led 1/3 of the Dragon Clan in rebellion and was struck down, nailed to the icy fields of the North Pole by the Black King. Afterwards, the Black King created the 4 monarchs, each a twin pair, guardians of earth, wind, water, and fire. Over countless ages, dragon-human hybrids were born, and their numbers steadily multiplied. Those mixed bloods combined with the monarchs to overturn the Black King's rule. Their rebellion succeeded, but at a terrible cost. The monarchs suffered massive losses. One after another, they fell into deep slumber to withdraw from the world, or retreated to incubate and be reborn. The stream flowed on, carrying the long and tangled history of the Dragon Clan across Chu Zihang's eyes, leaving him feeling small and raw before the weight of things he had scarcely imagined. Chapter 505, Deathfire Sea Gift Pack. Chu Zihang stared down into the river of time. The longer he looked, the more shocked he became. Seeing Odin's true identity and the arrangements Odin had made over the past century sent a tremor through him, not because Odin had been exposed, but because he saw his father there. Chu Tianjiao had become Odin's puppet, yet he was still alive, entombed inside Odin's Nibelungen. Chu Zihang's golden pupils flared. Even the black contact lenses couldn't hide the fire in his eyes. He watched the image of Odin holding a long spear and burned every detail into his memory. He said nothing and showed no visible excitement. He was always outwardly calm, the model student. Inside, however, his killing intent boiled so fiercely he felt ready to draw his sword and charge at any moment. After committing every scene about Odin to memory, Chu Zihang scanned other parts of the River of Time. Lu Mingfei, he blurted, surprised. He had just seen Lu Mingfei's figure in the dragon race's history, so lonely, so violent, radiating an arrogance and dominance that rivaled the Black King's. Lu Mingfei was a dragon king too, possibly on par with the Black King. If Nidhogg had been the old Black King, was Lu Mingfei the new one? Chu Zihang stared at the man beside him. You, Lu Mingfei, is he really? These are all images of the past. They're absolutely real, the man said, waving a finger without looking up. Also, you can call me Liang. Sir is fine, but Liang works too. Chu Zihang didn't understand the distinction between the two names, but he accepted the fact that his junior school classmate could be a dragon king hiding in the human world. He looked back at Liang. There was no trace of this god in the River of Time. Was he a dragon king as well? Senior Liang, Chu Zihang said, instead of using the casual name. The night felt as cold and portentous as Yigucheng's showdown with Shimen Chuishui. Calling him Senior felt right. Senior, are you also a dragon king? Me? I'm not from your world. Just visiting, Liang replied, still watching the River of Time. He was peering through eras at the 7 alchemical kingdoms of the dragon race world: conceptual armament, material transformation, life alchemy. He could use those methods himself. This kind of alchemy, which bent rule-like concepts into effect, was still novel. The alchemy taught at the Supreme Mage Academy couldn't reach this level. After studying for only a few minutes, Liang began to experiment. He started with conceptual armament, turning abstract concepts into tangible weapons and equipment. Let me see. Frostbox, he murmured, drawing a shape in the air. A frostbox formed from nothing. He tossed it, examined it, then crushed it back into molecules until it scattered into nothingness. Chu Zihang watched, eyes twitching. Liang continued casually. Sword of Promised Victory, Flame Dragon Armor, 7 Dragon Balls, Infinity Stones, I can't refine that one yet. One conceptual weapon after another appeared and was casually dissolved. Conceptual armament didn't require complete knowledge of a weapon's structure, only a clear idea of the abilities and concept the weapon should embody, plus sufficiently high alchemical skill and mental power. He ran through the other 6 kingdoms as well: elemental control, soul alchemy, then, satisfied, dispersed the River of Time. Every world truly holds surprises, he said. Liang noticed Chu Zihang still dazed beside him. Wake up, Chu Zihang. It's time to go home. The car to pick you up is downstairs. Chu Zihang snapped back. The alchemical weapon still lingered in his head. With even one of those, he could cut his way into Odin's Nibelungen and save his father. He glanced downstairs at his stepfather, who was coming out with an umbrella, then back at Liang. He bowed. Senior Liang, I need great power to save my father. Could you teach me how to get it? I'll pay. No, I'll do anything for you. Liang had heard this kind of plea many times before. Dark Strange, Uchiha Sasuke, Chu Zihang, each earnest and willing to risk everything. It had moved him the first few times. Now he felt only a flicker of sympathy. But he was planning to collect some dragon race blood anyway, so helping Chu Zihang fit his plans. He traced a few gestures in the air and used conceptual armament to forge a single golden bead the size of a pea. Here, he said, tossing it to Chu Zihang. This is the server center. Protecting it is the price for gaining power. Then Liang withdrew an M-body from his world ring, flung it into space, and transformed it into a conceptual entity. Without another word, he vanished from Shilon Middle School and flew east, settling in to wait for the blood to be collected automatically. Chu Zihang stared at the golden bead in his palm and touched it. A light screen projected before him. Universal Exchange System Service Center activated. Guardian detected, granting novice gift package. Do you wish to open the novice gift package? Chu Zihang hesitated, then nodded. Yes, gift package opened. As the server guardian, you may choose one of the following 3 rewards. 1. Chakra Seed, Senju Body, Sharingan gift package. 2. Basic Hakuda, Shunpo, Kido, Hogyoku, and Adaptive Zanpakudo gift package 3. 3 colors of Haki, Marine 6 powers, and Random Devil Fruit gift package. Chu Zihang blinked. He thought he'd heard of these things somewhere before. Faint, familiar names that had somehow found their way onto the projection. Chapter 506. Does Jiang want to truly live? But after thinking it over, Chu Zihang was certain he knew nothing about the items in the newbie gift pack. That wasn't surprising. How could he possibly understand something a god handed him? It was like the River of Time and the ancient draconic history he'd seen in it. He had only just lifted the black cloth from his eyes today and finally seen the true face of this world. Beneath the Arctic Ocean, he replayed the scenes from the River of Time again and again, etching in his mind the possible location of the Nibelungen, where his father might be. Once he'd made sure he wouldn't forget, he turned back to the floating screen and let his gaze sweep between the 3 choices. The most important thing now was to choose. He didn't know whether the system would disappear if he hesitated. Footsteps were already coming up the stairs, and his stepfather was calling his name from downstairs. Chu Zihang didn't hesitate long. He clicked the second option on the projection. He didn't understand the contents of any of the 3 packages, so he picked the one that matched his fighting style. The most important thing to him was the sword on his back. His strongest discipline was the kendo he'd learned at the youth palace. It was what he knew best. Do you confirm selecting the God of Death's grand gift package? Obtaining the power of this system requires modification to the Guardian's body. Chu Zihang's eyes flickered. After modification, will I be stronger or weaker? According to the Guardian's requested strength evaluation, you will become 5 to tens of thousands of times stronger. Tens of thousands of times. He double-checked the line to make sure he read it right. It was indeed tens of thousands. He nodded without hesitation. Confirm selection. This option will convert the Guardian into a god of death, no longer a pure human. Please confirm your selection again. Not human? If that was what it took to find that man and take revenge on Odin, he didn't care. Confirm. Congratulations, Guardian. You have received the God of Death's grand gift package. Now beginning. Beep. Other living beings detected nearby. Gift package distribution paused. Will continue in a safe environment. System officially activated. Server started. Server covering the entire world. Subsystems being distributed. Zihang, why are you still up here? I've been calling you from downstairs forever. Let's go home. I have a meeting at the company tonight. A middle-aged man came up the stairs. With quick fingers, Chu Zihang palmed the golden, bean-sized object into his pocket, and the projection went dark. He nodded silently to his stepfather. Okay, let's go home. Thank you. Chu Zihang read the last line of the system prompt one more time. He had guesses, but he absolutely could not have imagined just how dramatic the system Leon had slapped together really was. While Chu Zihang and his stepfather went home, across the world, hundreds of thousands of hybrids, anyone with draconic blood whose bloodline level was C-grade or higher, human or dragon, suddenly saw a golden virtual dialogue box pop up. It looked like a QQ or Yahoo chat window, very much in tune with the era. The box didn't appear physically or even reflected in their eyes. It was projected directly onto their visual cortex, making it feel as though a window had opened in front of them. Do you want to truly live? Do you want to see through the essence of the world? Yes or no. A torrential rain hammered the streets. Lu Mingfei held his coat over his head like a makeshift umbrella and ran through the downpour, splashing water up to his thighs with every step. "Oh my God!" he cried, then slipped and went face first into a puddle. His wet hair plastered to his face. He sucked in a mouthful of water and spat and coughed. "Cough, cough!" Cough! No, no. He yanked his head out of the water and stared around in a panic. Am I dreaming? Did I get drenched and lose my mind? That's it. Aunt won't pay my medical bills. People on the street with umbrellas kept their heads down, but now every one of them was looking at him. Concern, confusion, amusement, like he'd gone and become a spectacle. Mortified, Lu Mingfei did a clumsy about-face and dashed into a small alley. When he saw nobody following, he leaned against the awning of a garage and groped for his phone, lips trembling. After running, his head had cleared enough to accept that the screen in front of him was as real as anything else. If it were a dream, it was a dream with golden special effects. He certainly couldn't have imagined that sober. And if it was dreamlike, then this box had to be something like QQ. No way. It's really a QQ chat box? Has Tencent invented a bio-attack? Why me, of all people? Is it too late to top up 10 yuan in Q coins to grovel now? He muttered nonsense to himself. But Lu Mingfei was not the type to be cowed by jokes. When he ran errands for Chen Wenwen at university, he'd always returned with a bright smile, no matter how much Zhao Menghua's cronies mocked him. He kept telling himself he was going to die, but in his heart, he started praying to Guanyin, the Jade Emperor, Buddha, Jesus, anything to bring luck. His finger hovered, then pressed the yes button. He was too nervous, too excited to notice the tiny lines of text in the bottom right corner of the chat box. He only saw the idea he'd always fantasized about. One day, men in black would burst into his classroom, kneel, and proclaim, "Please, Dragon King, return and save the world." He would be the savior, powerful beyond imagining, and Chen Wenwen would look on admiringly. The small print, nearly impossible to read without a magnifier, said, "Clicking yes means you agree to bind with the all-purpose exchange system. The system will extract all of the host's superpowers as initial exchange capital. Yes means agree. No means very much agree. If you do not agree, please click the X in the upper right corner. All rights of interpretation belong to the creator of this system." Lu Mingfei hesitated, then pressed yes. Immediately he froze. He thought he heard a faint then a barely audible chuckle, like someone far away calling him this loser. He wanted to protest that if he wasn't going to be called handsome, he could at least be called dickhead instead of loser. Before he could say anything, a strange sensation seemed to be drawn out of him. A sudden, overwhelming sadness hit like a wave from his chest. He clutched his ribs, the sorrow surged, and then vanished as quickly as it had come. Cold wind and rain blew into the shelter. He shivered and shoved the confusion to the back of his mind. He was nothing if not carefree in his way. He looked at the screen again, nervous and hoping it was really happening and not just a hallucination. Could modern medicine treat hallucinations like this? Was he going crazy? While his thoughts spun, the dialog box on the screen shifted. The yes-no options and the other text dissolved into static and then into a complex interface, like a website. The interface was dark gold. His headshot was in the upper left, with ID 00002. Below it read, Strength Assessment, Normal Person. Under that was a balance section. Lu Mingfei blinked hard and counted, absurdly. Tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 300,000? His mouth fell open. Does this thing give so much money at the start? How inflated is this currency? A prompt beeped. A new dialog box appeared. Do you need a beginner's guide? He clicked yes. This system is a universal trading system. The host can sell anything they own to the system in exchange for points, which can then be redeemed for system items. But I don't have any money. If I don't have money, how do I get things to sell? He thought nervously. He was half convinced this was some kind of scam or pyramid scheme. People tricked into pyramid schemes ended up swearing and begging to hit quotas. It sounded worse than the coal bosses. The system answered him before he could spiral further. If you have no salable possessions, you can accept tasks issued by the system and sell your labor for points. Oh, Lu Mingfei crowed like a rooster. So I have to do tasks. He felt like he was in a single-player game. The system kept explaining itself. In the center of the home interface were redeemable items, abilities and resources you could buy with points. On the right was a task board that needed to be activated to receive tasks. But he'd stopped listening. When he opened the item catalog, the rows of icons nearly blinded him. Lumos, Alohomora, Wingardium Leviosa, Hogwarts spells. divine tree fruit, Zampakuto, devil fruits. What the hell? If all these powers were real, who made this system and how terrifying must they be? His finger slipped and opened an item page. Expelliarmus. There were pictures and a description. Price, 10 points. 10 points? That's not bad. Wait, what was my balance again? He checked. 300,000 points through 300,000? He was speechless. His head felt empty, like a tornado had swept through. Hands shaking, he clicked buy, then confirm purchase. Almost immediately, he felt something slide into his mind, the casting method for Expelliarmus. He stood there, drenched under the shelter, utterly flustered. Another prompt popped up. Detected host has purchased magic, but lacks mana and a wand. Would you like to purchase the corresponding abilities? Buy, he muttered. The interface updated with options. Wizard genes, magical beast genes, graded inferior to superior, and wands, rotten wood wand, ornate wand, elder wand, cyber wand. His heart pounded. He glanced at his balance again, and then impulsively chose the most expensive options. A 1,000-point Phoenix plus Fire Dragon, Eruptant plus Wizard Gene, and a 1,000-point Uru Metal Thunder Wand. He confirmed the purchases. A warm current surged through him and an object materialized in his hand. He glanced at it, a heavy metal wand, real enough in weight and texture that holding it felt like an extra heartbeat. On impulse, he waved it and said, Expelliarmus! Thunder cracked. The wand shot a lightning beam that blew a crater more than 3 meters across in the concrete road in front of him. Lu Mingfei's hand trembled so hard, he almost dropped the wand. You call this Expelliarmus? If he were at Castle College, he'd be certain the equipment department had messed with the stats. Windows everywhere began opening as people poked their heads out. He'd made a scene. Panic spiked through him. The system suggested, it is recommended the host purchase Reparo. Right? Buy. He was spending like a tycoon with a gold chain and diamond rings, a stark contrast to the careful budgeting he used to do for a bottle of Nutri-Express. He bought Reparo without hesitation. The rubble rewound, the hole closed, and the road flattened, even smoother than before. Relief was short-lived as voices from the surrounding apartments erupted in exclamations. He gasped. Quick, system! I want Obliviate! Half a minute later, he was breathing again under the rain shelter. It was real. He'd picked up a system on the street, and it had given him 300,000 points on the spot. Scrolling through the store, he gaped at more prices. Divine Tree Fruit, 100,000 points. Otsutsuki Main Family Bloodline, 80,000. Mangekyo Sharingan, 5,000. Zanpakuto Ryujin Jaka, 80,000. Devil Fruit, Rumble, 5,000. His mind ran wild. I'll just try a Divine Tree Fruit, Wood Release, Flying Thunder God, Eternity Mangekyo Sharingan, and the 10 Tails first, just to see, he said aloud. Confirm purchase. The system didn't ask again this time. Hey, he started. All rights of interpretation belong to this system. Chapter 508, Chapter Task 1, Confession. This was an era before Naruto Shippuden had even aired. Lu Mingfei, thinking the strongest abilities were Mangekyo and Wood Release, had foolishly bought a whole bundle of powers. As a result, his eyes suddenly transformed into Eternal Mangekyo, and the 10 Tails appeared inside his body. Then, when he excitedly ate the Divine Tree Fruit, he finally realized that many of the abilities he'd purchased were redundant. The Divine Tree Fruit itself had already granted him chakra equivalent to the 10 Tails and a 9 Tomoe Rinnegan. All those extra powers were now stacked on top, but he had wasted tens of thousands of points for nothing. Lu Mingfei stood there in the rain, drenched and numb, his chest aching over the points he'd squandered. He didn't even notice that the heavy rain and cold wind no longer made him feel cold. Can I get a refund? He asked weakly. The system that had fallen from the sky was as much a ripoff as the Q-coin system. All goods sold are non-refundable and non-exchangeable. Lu Mingfei scowled. Where did this unscrupulous merchant system come from? Nowadays, store signs that say no refunds are illegal. Report them and you'll get fined. He felt a pang of regret, but it wasn't enough to ruin him. The 300,000 points had been free, and maybe it was just a bug that the system would reclaim later. The thought that everything could be taken back made him shiver, and he hurried back to the shop interface to spend more points. This time, he was much more careful. The Death God series required body modifications to become non-human. No thanks. He didn't want to become so repulsive that everyone would hate him. The One Piece series had hockey, so he bought what he could: observation hockey and armament hockey. Conqueror's hockey was unavailable to this host. There were other unfamiliar skills with useful-sounding descriptions, so he bought those too. All of Hogwarts' magic bundled together cost less than 3,000 points. Naturally, he bought it all. Because the One Piece series had many devil fruits, he stocked up. He kept buying until his points ran out. The fruits the system sold were different from the manga. You could eat many of them without restriction. Lu Mingfei ran home through the rain, a school bag full of fruits on his back, eating a few along the way. He stopped when he had 6 left. 3 were for his aunt, and Lu Mingzi. The other 3 were for Chen Wenwen, Su Xiaoqiang, and his online buddy Old Tang. Aunt had taken care of him for years, so he saved the best mochi fruit for her. Aunt and Lu Mingzi often bossed him around, so he mischievously set aside the sticky fruit and the cream fruit for them. According to the descriptions, those would let someone turn into a viscous, snot-like or cream-like substance. The image of Aunt and Lu Mingzi oozing about made him laugh to himself. Chen Wenwen got the smooth fruit. It would make her beautifully attractive. Su Xiaoqiang was a friend he sometimes clashed with, but who could also be kind, so he bought her the love fruit to make her a heartthrob. Old Tang, his online friend, got a Mera flame fruit. That rounded out Lu Mingfei's social circle. Even though he had spent all his points, Lu Mingfei felt a rush of accomplishment. He imagined himself as a hidden powerhouse finally about to reveal his true self, and Lu Mingzi would have to cling to his thigh and call him Brother Mingfei. He grinned at the thought, feeling very pleased with himself. Then a new notification popped up on his still open system interface. You have new quest orders. Lu Mingfei looked to the right of the interface. Quest 1, publicly confess to Chen Wenwen in front of the entire class. Reward, 100 points. Quest 2, travel to the Arctic Ocean to find the Nibelungen. Reward, 1,000. Quest 3, defeat the Black King infant or score the first kill on Odin beneath the Arctic Ocean. Reward, 10,000 points. Hey, what? Confess to Chen Wenwen. Are you kidding me? Lu Mingfei's cheeks flamed scarlet. He completely ignored the other 2 quests, mortified. The system remained silently open as if mocking him. What kind of look is that? How can you say I like her? His secret felt exposed. Chen Wenwen was his softest spot, and now that softness had been grabbed and squeezed. This system was terrifying. It seemed to be reading his mind. I want to unbind. I don't want the system anymore. Unbind. Unbind now. Unbinding failed. Ah! Lu Mingfei pulled his jacket over his face and bolted down the rain-slick street. A few kilometers away, Leon casually picked up Xiaomi, who lay bruised and battered on the ground, and glanced in Lu Mingfei's direction. Will a loser who gains superpowers actually confess? He asked, to no one in particular. Even if he does, he'll probably say something lame like, I don't mean anything else. I just want someone to buy 2 half-price milk teas with me in the future. The quest to make Lu Mingfei confess had been issued by Leon. Everyone had a loser kid version of themselves inside sometimes, and Leon was no exception. Since he'd run into Lu Mingfei, he couldn't resist nudging that loser along. He wouldn't admit he was enjoying the spectacle, but he was. Lu Mingfei won't confess anytime soon. For now. Leon's gaze dropped to the bloodied, unconscious Xiaomi. He decided to toss Teacher Daye back into the Nibelungen at the BJ subway station. As he flew away from Shilon Middle School, he hadn't bothered to disguise his movements, and he happened to meet Xiaomi's eyes. Xiaomi had been crouched on a utility pole, watching Chu Zihang and searching for signs of Odin. She might have mistaken Leon for another Dragon King, and in that instant malicious intent flared. Her killing intent rebound activated, and she fell. If Leon hadn't already dampened the effect twice before, Teacher Daye might have gone straight back to the fountain, waiting to be resurrected. Go! Leon tore open a spatial rift and threw Xiaomi into it. Then he rose into the air, looked around, and took in everyone currently facing a system choice. Genoa Bay, Italy. A blond young man of 17 or 18 sat at the bow of a ship, face turned toward the sun, glittering on the sea. Shirtless, His hair blowing over his shoulders, he had been drinking cup after cup of wine when something in him shifted. Truly living, the truth of the world, he murmured. Interesting. Caesar clicked yes without hesitation. Something was subtly drawn from his body, and the interface popped open. His ID was 00, and his balance read 5,000. There were hints in the original stories that Caesar's father, Pompey, was Odin, the king of sky and wind. Without missing a beat, Caesar grinned. Conqueror's hockey? Not bad. Bye. He waved his hand and immediately began shopping on the system interface. Castle College. The Valhalla conference room. Principal Angers sat at the head of the long table, Vice Principal Flammel at his side. Professors and equipment department researchers filled the room. The air felt heavy, as if a great weight hung over everyone's heads. Norma judges this is very likely a Dragon King's scheme. The hidden note in the lower right, it's a devil's contract. I propose I sign it and sell my soul. The head of the equipment department, Akadula, slammed his fist on the table and rose, eyes blazing with theatrical zeal. Everyone glanced at him with a mixture of pity and amusement. They knew Akadula's flair for the dramatic. He wasn't the only one ready to perform. Another researcher from equipment was already standing to outdo him. Professor Schneider quietly muttered, "That sudden dialogue box is undoubtedly the Dragon King's doing. We still remember the Greenland ice sea disaster 10 years ago. The college is the heart of the secret party's dragon-slaying force. We can't risk a calamity here." "We can't afford it," agreed others. "But Castle College exists for this very moment." Angers, who had been listening, spoke up suddenly. His silver-white hair was combed back, and flecks of gold flickered in his silver-gray eyes, startling everyone. He was an old man, skin creased like withered bark, but now he wore the calm, terrible focus of a predator awakened. "I believe the students are ready. More importantly, I am ready." He rose. "I will click yes within the deepest alchemical matrix of the ice cellar. I will face the Dragon King's might head-on. If this is a trap, then I will step over its corpse, or let it step over mine to get out." For a moment, the elegant old gentleman seemed less like an administrator than a madman who had walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He sealed himself in the depths of the ice cellar and clicked yes. System binding. Dragon Clan bloodline extraction. Interface expansion. Anger's ID flashed, 09876. His points balance, 1,000. The ancient man who had expected a fight stared at the bright system store in the cold dark. There was no time to linger. After the Dragon Clan bloodline was taken, his vitality, already thin at his age, ebbed rapidly. Norma, the AI assistant, prompted him in time. He bought the 100-point God of Death transformation package and a 100-point starter Zanpakuto and a Sauchi. He spent his remaining points on speed-enhancing skills, Shunpo, Shunshin, Soru, Geppo, and the like. When Angers walked out of the ice cellar, he still looked like an old man with silver-white hair, but the decrepitude was gone. He moved with restored vigor, if a little dazed. "Everyone, click yes," he said. "I don't think this prompt can be from the Dragon King." In a luxurious chamber, a young-looking boy swirled a glass of red wine with the carefree air of someone who'd never had to worry, until his face changed. The glass shattered on the floor. Mei and Su Engshi, sitting stiffly nearby, also looked alarmed. A dialogue box appeared in front of me. The two women jumped up. The boy's composure shattered. Veins stood out on his forehead as he glared into the distance. "Brother, his aura is gone. No cocoon, nothing. Who did this? Odin, Jörmungandr, traitors." His body began to thin, shifting from solid to translucent. Whatever power had sustained him faltered. He could no longer shape dreams into reality. His mood flickered wildly. Fury melted into a grief as if centuries of failure had finally welled up. "Brother, are we destined to fail? We have to restart the world 10,000 times, and still there will be no ending for us." He stared toward Lu Mingfei's direction and froze. "Wait, brother's still alive? But why?" Something like a vision passed over his face, dazed and then suddenly ecstatic. Joy spread across his features until he laughed without restraint. People from outside the world. So that's it. The hope of countless restarts. People from outside the world. As his body became entirely transparent, he forced his fingers to click yes on the interface in front of him. "Confirm. I confirm." "Ha!" System binding succeeded. His balance read 300,000. The interface cataloged abilities at a glance. He bought the God of Death transformation first, then purchased powers named Aizen, Ewok, and others. In the next moment, he vanished amid Mei and Su Engshi's cries. Far away, in the Arctic Circle over Siberia, on a Nibelungen, a boy pierced through the chest by a world tree branch and nailed to a cross suddenly opened his eyes. In the Nibelungen at the Beijing subway station, Xiaomi was jarred awake by something enormous. She blinked and recoiled instinctively. Before her stood a crimson fox the size of a small car, 9 tails flicking behind it. The fox lowered its head, looking at her with gentle intelligence. "Sister, don't you recognize me?" "What sister? Don't just call me your sister." Xiaomi sprang up, then froze as a dialogue box appeared before her. "Truly alive? What nonsense. Sis, I clicked that thing and bought what it offered. Now I can move freely," the 9-tailed fox said, nudging her with a padded snout. Xiaomi's eyes widened. "You are Fenrir?" "It's me, sister." The fox wagged its tails happily. Xiaomi stared, bewildered. At Fenrir's urging, she hesitantly clicked yes on the prompt. The shame of the Dragon Kings manifested at once. Teacher Ye completely lost her Dragon Clan bloodline. Xiaomi screamed and hit Fenrir as if everything hinged on it, but she didn't notice the system interface flashing a balance of 10,000 points. The Nibelungen began to crumble. Moments later, golden light suffused Xiaomi. Her body shifted into 9 tails mode. She burst out of the old subway and shot up into the sky. Tokyo, the Genji Heavy Industries building. Yuan Zhisheng and several Hachi family leaders were in a meeting. Deep within the building, behind layers of thick metal doors, a room isolated from the world held Uesugi Eri. She sat in a Miko outfit, controller in hand, playing a game. A dialogue box blinked in her field of view. "Do you want to truly live? Do you want to see through the essence of the world?" Eri paused. The battle screen of Samurai Showdown 2 flashing KO. A bright light flickered in her indifferent eyes. She lowered the controller, raised a pale finger, and pressed yes. The dark golden interface unfurled like a scroll before Eri's eyes. She scanned the items in the mall. Her once lifeless face slowly brightened. Her expression, previously doll-like and blank, became lively and glittered with curiosity. She scrolled past Harry Potter, past Naruto, from Death Note to Aquaman, until her finger paused over a shadow of Aquaman. Every item tugged something inside her, tiny surges of joy that accumulated into a real small smile. If her brother, Yuan Zhisheng, had seen it, he would have been terrified. He had never seen that expression on Eri's face. Eri's life was confined to a single room, sealed behind layers of blast-proof doors. Not out of snobbery, but protection. She had been a monster since birth, and strict containment was the only way to make others feel safe. Her whole world was that room. Beautiful, admittedly. Antique sandalwood scent in the air, wooden floors polished to a shine, winding corridors like those of an old aristocratic mansion. A dwelling like that in Tokyo, where land is priceless, would be beyond the reach of 99% of people. But Eri had no idea how exceptional or expensive it all was. She knew nothing of the real world. Her reality had been assembled from cartoons and games. In her worldview, pirates and marines battled daily on the high seas with devil fruits, and souls wandered the Soul Society after death. The 5 greatest secret organizations were the big ninja villages, Konoha, Sunagakure, and so on. And in a country called Japan, terrifying giant monsters sometimes escaped and ravaged cities, only to be cut down by Ultraman, who always arrived just in time. Eri knew she was a monster, but she wasn't as massive as Golza, nor as grotesque as Gigera's flower, nor able to evolve endlessly like the Chaos Virus. Those were the big monsters. She was a little one. Her brother loved Ultraman and handed her DVDs of all kinds. To others, the special effects films were childish. To her, they were horrific and painfully real. She felt for the creatures Ultraman destroyed. The moment a monster was blasted apart by a light beam, she felt its fear and the terror of obliteration. So when she saw an item called the Trial of Legieduo in the mall, her scrolling finger froze. A familiar dread flooded her chest. She felt suddenly weak, as if struck by an Ultraman's light beam. Ever since the system had extracted her dragon race bloodline, she had been made ordinary, far weaker than she'd been when she could tear through blast-proof doors without effort. She'd been so absorbed in the mall that she hadn't noticed her loss of strength until the fear hit her now. Slowly, she crouched to the floor, trembling more than she ever had, even more than when she'd been bound to the bed and injected with serum to suppress dragon blood. She thought, with the childish literalness of her imagination, that some Ultraman's light had finally struck her. Despite the fear, she tapped the trial of Legieduo. In truth, almost no one bought that kind of thing. Many items granted abilities directly. This one was only a trial, and it cost 1,000 points. Most people wouldn't spend that. Eri didn't know better. She had only 3,000 points, and buying it would leave her with 2/3 of that. Still, she confirmed the purchase with a faint automatic click. When the interface confirmed the purchase, she sank to the ground, hugged her knees, and curled in on herself. She clutched her toys. Eri's duck, Rilakuma, Hello Kitty, and the Ultraman and monster figures she jammed into a toy train. Those toys were her whole world. She wanted to take them with her if she died, so perhaps in the Soul Society she might still see them. Above, Leon floated, watching Lu Mingfei's family scene. The Dragon King returns only to be sent by Ant to buy soy sauce, and studying the dragon race bloodline data the system had collected. The dragon race weren't necessarily strong in raw physical power. Even the mightiest Black King might not survive a nuclear blast. But they were rulers of the rules. The 4 Dragon Kings embodied earth, wind, water, and fire. The White King was the spirit element. The Black King commanded all authority and could even restart a world or reverse cause and effect. In that dragon race hierarchy, an Otsutsuki like Kaguya could sweep through easily, but to truly restart a world, even someone like her might fall short. Leon gathered dragon blood as much to enrich his gene pool as to study their causal powers. He was multitasking, watching Lu Mingfei pull out a devil fruit and fumble with Ant, when something made him freeze. Someone had bought the trial of Legieduo. He'd added the item to the mall on a whim. He never expected anyone to spend so many points on a trial. Points were precious. Trading a C-rank bloodline got you 20, B rank 50, A rank 100, S rank between 500 and 3,000. Who would spend 1,000 points for a trial? Leon's mind wandered to odd possibilities. A messenger of light who had once become limelight with Tiga outside a TV? He even thought of Yuan Jisheng, the tortoise who wanted to sell sunscreen. Maybe he would do something absurd like that. He used causal tracing and turned his attention. The purchase had been made by Wesugi Eri. Leon's surprise showed he hadn't expected this little monster to be the buyer. He fished a pendant from his lapel that resembled Legieduo's timer, the transformation device he'd crafted and always kept close, maintaining a cosmic-level interface with himself. The device was called the Great Cosmic Will. Bathed in flickering silver-purple light, Leon became a streak of light, traversing thousands of kilometers. He arrived at the Genji Heavy Industries building and passed through its layers of blast-proof doors. In Eri's room, in her eyes, endless pure light surged from every corner and began to engulf her. Chapter 511. Eri Who Turns into Light. It was a pocket world made entirely of pure, ultimate light. Wesugi Eri's eyelashes fluttered as she slowly opened her eyes, her deep rose-red pupils listlessly taking in her surroundings. She had reverted to that doll-like state, empty of vitality, emotion drained away. She stared at the world before her. Sheets of colorless light flowed toward her, soft and blinding. All around, above and below, was an endless white made of light. For a moment she felt she had risen to heaven. She curled up, clutching her toys like a small red cat that had been mauled by a giant black bear, too frightened to move. Then she realized she was sitting in the palm of a giant Legado Ultraman. Eri knew Legado from the films, an omnipotent being born from the universe's will. Why would such an Ultraman come to kill her? She felt she must have committed something terrible. She buried her face in her knees, leaving only her eyes visible, and watched Legado like a wary kitten. Leon noticed something was wrong. Why was Eri curled and trembling like a frightened animal? Hadn't she purchased the trial for him to come? Why did it feel like he'd come to rob or punish her? He briefly wondered if his sheer size intimidated her, then used causality to trace the problem back and found the reason. He hid a small smile of exasperation and amusement. "Uesugi Eri," he said gently, You chose my trial. Are you ready to begin? Eri lifted her head slightly. Red hair fell over her forehead. After a pause, she took a small notebook from her arms, wrote with a pen, and held it up. Does Legedo Ultraman not kill small monsters? She had been mistaken. Small monsters like her were usually dealt with by other Ultramen. Legedo handled the major threats, the Giga Endras and the like. Leon's voice was calm but authoritative as he replied, Don't worry. Legedo is the embodiment of justice and order. The part of order you'll experience is Cosmos Ultraman. He treats monsters as friends. Confusion clouded Eri's eyes as if she'd only just woken. Gradually, the blankness in her gaze softened. Cosmos Ultraman, her favorite, treated monsters kindly. She wasn't going to be killed. Instead, she was being healed. As the realization spread through her, she felt something else. The beast that had roared in her chest eased. The desperate, uncontrollable urge that had once surged through her receded. It was Cosmos. It was Cosmos. She raised her notebook and wrote one more thing. Can I meet Cosmos Ultraman? Eri had a habit of writing because the high concentration of dragon blood in her once-made speech dangerous, so she communicated on paper to avoid losing control. Now, having lost that dragon bloodline, she no longer risked losing herself by speaking aloud, though she didn't yet know this. Still, she held the notebook up like someone taking the first tentative step onto the moon, trying to reach out to Legedo as a small monster. Leon asked, Are you sure you want Cosmos Ultraman as your trial vessel? Eri tilted her head, puzzled. Then Leon clapped his hands. His 5 huge fingers closed around her. Then the trial begins. Though called a trial, it was an illusion, and Leon's illusions had long since reached near perfection. He could construct scenarios indistinguishable from reality, using all the rules he had learned. Eri's trial followed the plot of Cosmos Ultraman. Leon made it easy for her. He placed Eri into the Universe Development Center within the illusion, taking the role of Cosmos and merging with her the way Musashi did in the story. He let her fight monsters, adapt to the power, and learn its skills. He added extra challenges to test determination, perseverance, character, and courage. Episodes like Jujera's Flower and encounters with monsters such as Yefu and Speeder. They were all tests, but Eri loved them. She truly believed she had stepped outside and become Cosmos Ultraman. In the illusion, she even forgot about her brother waiting at home. Each time a monster appeared, she raised her courage stick and transformed, repeatedly unleashing wave after wave, full moon wave, until the enemy was driven back. Being a small monster herself, she naturally treated other large monsters kindly. Only when she met truly evil foes did she strike them down, and each time she did, she felt a sharp, lingering sadness. The first time she killed a monster, she sat on a windowsill watching a painted sunset and said to Leon, "The world is actually very gentle. They just haven't had the chance to see it yet." Months passed quickly inside the illusion, while outside only an instant ticked by. At last, Eri passed the trial. When she opened her eyes, she found herself back in the pocket world of light. The giant Legedo before her shimmered into particles and drifted apart. The hand that had cradled her dissolved. She began to fall. In the scattering light, she saw Leon and heard him say, "Protect this gentle world, Eri. From now on, you are Cosmos Ultraman." For a moment, she was stunned. It was the same farewell between Cosmos and Musashi in the story. Before sorrow could fully rise, before she could arrange a time and place to meet again, she was back in her old room. "I'm back." Eri, dressed in a Miko outfit, sat on the floor in a crouched position and took in the familiar yet strange room. The months she'd spent in the illusion had been the most wonderful she'd had in over 10 years. Now the journey was over. The voice that had been speaking within her had vanished. The courage stick rolled out from her embrace with a soft thud. She scooped it back up and hugged it. At that moment, the heavy 3-meter explosion-proof door hissed open. Yuan Zhisheng and a group of researchers, doctors, and nurses rushed in. Eri, don't click that dialogue box yet. We still can't confirm. Phew, you didn't click it?" Yuan shouted, then let out a relieved breath when he saw her. Eri held up the courage stick and said flatly, "Brother, I turned into light." Yuan's eyes went wide. Before he could register Eri speaking aloud, she shifted, and instantly he saw his sister become a human-sized Cosmos Ultraman. His worldview tilted and collapsed in an instant. Several days later, Leon watched every user who had activated the system. It was the first time he had handed out so many golden favors on such a scale. Those who escaped their original fates through the trading system were now living out their own wondrous stories. Leon watched the web of drama he'd set in motion with a quiet satisfaction, feeling something like the gods, eternity, death, must have felt. On that day, whether it was Lu Mingfei who'd botched a confession or Chu Zihang who had mastered the power of the god of death, people who had gained new abilities were converging on the Arctic Ocean. They were all heading to fulfill the system's first assigned kill mission, to face the Black King and Odin. Chapter 512, Departure to the Arctic Ocean. The Greenland Sea under the moonlight was a glacial world of deep blue. The crimson icebreaker Yamal, said to be the largest in the world, plowed ahead, cleaving the pack ice. For hundreds of nautical miles, there was only this one ship. Outside, the desolate expanse of ice made a person feel like a mere mayfly floating on the ocean. Inside the Yamal, however, the scene was the opposite, decadent revelry. The ship had originally been due in port for half a month of resupply and maintenance, but a wealthy client had paid a fortune to see the aurora earlier than usual. The captain had warned that spring wasn't the best season for aurora viewing, but the money was persuasive. They sailed overnight. On departure, the captain kept selling tickets, picked up passengers at a few ports along the way, and by the end of the trip had earned more than he normally did in 6 months. Everything on board showed it. The casino, which usually had tables with minimum bets of $1, had no chips under 100 that night. The captain looked out at the endless ice through the porthole and found the glaciers, normally depressive, unusually enchanting. Even the white Russian beauties working the casino, serving drinks or dealing cards, seemed more seductive than usual, smiles as mellow as fine wine. Any foreign guest could make one of them happy with a tip worth months of wages. Of course, there were exceptions. Lu Mingfei, stop staring like a monkey at a banana. Still staring. Why don't you just dig your eyeballs out and stick them on that blonde's thigh? Su Xiaochang hissed, twisting his ear until he yelped. Ow, ow, ow. It's going to fall off, little goddess. Gently. I wasn't looking at anything, Lu Mingfei shrieked. Su Xiaochang snorted. Not looking? Does it only count if you touch it with your hand? No wonder you insisted on coming to the Arctic. You just wanted to see foreign girls' thighs. Lu Mingfei felt the sting of her words and inwardly groaned. A few days earlier, he'd picked up a system on the roadside, convinced he was about to hit the pinnacle of life. He had powers now. Magic, Manjikyo, even Rinnegan. But when he returned home, he still had to buy soy sauce and couldn't find a chance to show off his changes to his uncle and aunt. He had been sent to his room, out of sight and out of mind. He tolerated his aunt's nagging for a while, thinking 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river, and quietly bought the soy sauce, sulking alone in his room. But temperament is like an elastic rope. Pulled too tight, it snaps. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Feeling powerful, he decided, on impulse, not to hand out the devil fruits he'd prepared, and accepted the system's first mission, confessed to Chen Wenwen. The next day, he smoothed every wrinkle from his uniform with magic and fixed his hair into what he thought was a handsome style. Then, in front of the whole class, he stopped Chen Wenwen. Chen Wenwen! His neck stiffened like a telephone pole. His heart swelled as if a general marching into battle. But when Chen Wenwen turned and looked at him, her eyes reflecting a faint shadow, a melancholy like the one in Duraz's The Lover, Lu Mingfei's courage deserted him. I, he stammered. The whole class watched, nobody helped, and nobody jeered. Their gazes held the indifferent amusement of people watching a monkey teased with a banana. He forced himself on. I think the buy one get one free deal at the milk tea shop outside school is too wasteful. Do you want to? He choked off. Chen Wenwen leaned on her desk, eyes clear and unreadable, showing no reaction to his flushed face. He even glimpsed a trace of avoidance in her posture. It felt as if he'd missed a step and fallen. A classmate let out a suppressed giggle, then the room erupted into laughter. Humiliated, Lu Mingfei snapped. What are you laughing at? Are you all reincarnated hungry ghosts who can drink 2 cups of milk tea? He roared. The shout, accompanied by a burst of chakra, stunned everyone. Lu Mingfei fled the classroom and buried himself in a corner of the playground. He might have stayed there sulking if Su Xiaoqiang hadn't snuck up behind him, hands clasped behind her back, shouted to startle him, and then tossed a bag of potato chips into his arms. Hiding here crying quietly? Where did that majestic roar go? Despite her disdainful expression and arrogant eyebrows, in that moment Lu Mingfei felt sunlight on his face. This, he thought, was a true friend. He gave Su Xiaoqiang the devil fruits he'd prepared, including the one intended for Chen Wenwen. The next day she was still dizzy, not yet recovered from the staggering truth of the world. Meanwhile, Lu Mingfei, suffering both at home and at school, accepted the system's second and third missions. One mission pointed him toward the Yamal in the Arctic. He was a nobody with no connections and had never even heard of the Yamal. He'd planned to fly to the Arctic himself, but when Su Xiaoqiang wanted to learn the truth about the world, they joined forces. She provided the money and logistical effort, he provided cheers and moral support. Together they took leave and went to Nuuk in Greenland to board the Yamal. That brought them to the current scene. I really wasn't staring at thighs. If I am lying, let me jump off the stern and wrestle a polar bear. Lu Mingfei swore solemnly, raising a hand. Bullshit, you swear with all 5 fingers. Su Xiaoqiang released his ear and glared at him. The two of them bickered quietly in a corner, not drawing much attention, though the rest of the casino kept an eye on them. People aboard the ship watched one another too, wondering who else might have a system. The IDs the system used looked like a code, a cheap wholesale batch, but speculation remained speculation. The young age of Lu Mingfei and Su Xiaoqiang made others pause. To bind a system this young, their dragon blood level before binding must have been very high. That made some on board wary. Even so, a few people approached Lu Mingfei directly. 3 men, one with blonde hair and heavy muscles, one with black hair and an unreadable face, and one flamboyant older gentleman with white hair, headed straight for him. Chapter 513, Giant Whale and Snake Group. Lu Mingfei? A tall, expressionless black-haired man cut off the argument between Lu Mingfei and Su Xiaoqiang. Neither of them expected to be recognized here. Both turned and blurted, Chu Zihang! Lu Mingfei's jaw dropped. Senior brother Chu Zihang? You know me? Wait, how are you here? It's probably because of the system, another voice said. A man with chiseled classical features, golden hair falling to his shoulders, and ice-blue eyes like knives approached. He held up a wine glass and nodded toward the 3 of them without giving his surname. Caesar. It's rare to see young people on a ship like this. Most aren't qualified. You 3 are impressive. Caesar spoke like an emperor judging gladiators in an arena. His overwhelming presence made Lu Mingfei twitch. He felt awkward and out of place. Chu Zihang, however, remained calm and expressionless. I didn't come because of the system, he said. I came for answers and to kill a god. Chu Zihang's tone was colder than Caesar's. Lu Mingfei suddenly felt small and ridiculous. He had come mainly to dodge the social death of school. It reminded him of the Mount Hua Sword Conference. The power players all there for glory, while he'd turned up like an opportunistic hanger-on. Before he could think more, an elegantly aged gentleman strode over. He was dashing, with silver-gray eyes and a red rose pinned to his chest, a whiskey and smoke kind of charm. He patted each of the 3 men on the shoulder, skipping Su Xiaoqiang. Lu Mingfei, Caesar, I'd hoped to see you at Cassel, but I didn't expect our first meeting to be here. And Chu Zihang, he added, Norma said you've traced Castle's trail on your own. That's quite remarkable. He drained his glass in one swallow. We're no longer mixed bloods, he said, raising his glass slightly, but the true enemy still lies ahead. Smiling, the old man, Headmaster Angers, turned to leave. The future battlefield belongs to the young. I look forward to your brave deeds. He arrived and left like a breeze. Lu Mingfei was left confused. What did Angers mean by mixed bloods? Caesar and Chu Zihang, though, watched Angers go and exchanged a sharp look. The dragon-slaying battlefield belongs to us, Caesar said. Let's see who takes the first Dragon King's head. Caesar drained his wine, handed the glass to a nearby girl, and strode off. Chu Zihang nodded toward Lu Mingfei. Get some rest. The real battle begins very soon. Hey, wait. Can you tell me what the Dragon Kings are? And mixed bloods? Is there a mistake? Lu Mingfei asked, feeling the world tilt unfamiliar beneath him. Su Xiaoqiang's questioning glance only made his head throb. Chu Zihang smiled faintly. There's no need to understand Dragon Kings. They won't last long. As the three left, 4 more people walked past and spoke to him. A boy with a childish face had a long, pitch-black saber at his waist. His hand rested on the hilt as he smiled at Lu Mingfei and sauntered away. Enjoy your life outside of fate, brother. This time I won't make a bet and make you dance. Heh. Brother? Lu Mingfei thought. Everyone on this ship seemed strange. One thing he did glean, the people here probably shared the same system. That, and the terrifying items in the system's mall, made his already anxious heart contract. Lu Mingfei and Su Xiaoqiang wandered the Yamal and saw faces from all over the world. A red-haired witch in a Miko outfit, a man wearing a paper bag like a mascot, someone they called Mr. KFC, and a golden-haired playboy uncle embracing a girl. He even ran into an online friend, Xiao Tang, who'd brought along a younger boy he called his brother. They hugged and cried like friends who'd finally met in person. Lu Mingfei and Xiao Tang slept side by side that night. If it weren't for the satellite internet in the Arctic being so expensive, they'd have logged on together. Night deepened. In his sleep, Lu Mingfei suddenly felt the whole world shake. He slammed into the ceiling of his cabin. When he came to, the cabin was upside down, and seawater was already gurgling through the cracks. He kicked the cabin door open and was thrown against the iron plating by a wave of water. His strength felt unfamiliar, excessive, but it did him no harm. Xiao Tang and the younger boy were with him, submerged but oddly unharmed. They swam out together and surfaced to a nightmare. Corpses floated everywhere, the dark sea stained black with blood. In the gloom, countless sinuous shapes swam, thousands of slender, curved creatures like snakes. They had hard bones and rows of sharp teeth. They looked nothing like ordinary snakes, but Lu Mingfei couldn't summon a better name. The swarm charged like a school of sardines. There were so many that Lu Mingfei, Xiao Tang, and the boy could have been torn to bones. Instinct flared in Lu Mingfei. His vision snapped sharp, his eyes seemed to morph, and he unleashed a Shinra Tensei. The repulsion swept the seawater and the snake swarm away, instantly turning the attackers into a mist of blood. Xiao Tang gave a thumbs up. Lu Mingfei gestured toward the surface and told them to float up. He wanted to go rescue Su Xiaoqiang, but she didn't need saving. After eating the glint-glint fruit and the marrow fruit, the domineering little celestial maiden had already kicked her cabin door open and dragged out her roommate. When Lu Mingfei finally rose and planted his feet on the water, using chakra to steady himself, he understood what had happened. Dozens of people were stranded on the surface, some treading water like him, others flying or swimming. They were the survivors. Everyone else was dead. The Yamal had been struck by a massive object and capsized, now sinking upside down into the ocean. Ahead of them loomed the object that had caused it, a leviathan. It looked like a giant white sperm whale, but it wasn't a whale. Bone spurs covered its body. Its heartbeat pounded like thunder. It gave a long, mournful cry, beautiful like a song, but actually an infrasound attack. Each time the sound rolled over the sea, people around them staggered and sank. From the crowd, the golden-haired, sharp-featured man, Caesar, shot up into the sky. "If you're a dragon king, then bow to me," he roared, and Conqueror's haki erupted from him, sweeping the area. Chapter 514. Entering the Nibelung Overlord's ambition was an ability that required the user's own will to activate. Legend said only those with the right of a king could learn it. When Caesar descended from the sky like a monarch and unleashed Overlord's ambition, an invisible pressure rolled outward, enough to make any hardened scoundrel's heart quake. Under the surface, long, snake-like Deadpool creatures went limp under the force and floated up like dead fish. Leviathan, however, seemed unaffected by Caesar's intimidation. Its song-like cry rose into the night as it vaulted from the sea, driving up meter-high waves. Its blood-red maw, bristling with teeth, opened wide and blotted out the moonlight, ready to swallow everyone whole. The first to be taken was Caesar. The enormous mouth slammed shut at the same time a towering wave crashed down. That strike, close to a natural disaster, would have cut the number of survivors in half. From the crowd, Chu Zihang made a single motion and drew his Zanpakuto out of thin air. He stepped into the path of the oncoming wall of water, blade angled to the sky, and intoned a long string of words like a spell. The article subtly revealing its turbidity. It was the incantation of Kido Nober 90, Black Coffin from the Shinigami system. But someone was faster. "We're going to die! We're going to die! Ice release! One-horned white whale!" Lu Mingfei furiously formed hand seals like a man facing annihilation. Chakra burst from his body. A colossal ice-release narwhal, no smaller than Leviathan itself, rose from the water and slammed into the dragon. The impact sounded like colliding continents. The collision smashed the towering waves into a storm of spray. Water rained down everywhere. Everyone caught in the deluge, fleeing, fighting, or preparing to counterattack, turned to look at Lu Mingfei. Chu Zihang looked back, too. In that instant, the man who had seemed destined to lose became the center of attention. Then Chu Zihang surged forward. He kicked the falling Caesar clear of danger and drew his blade into the starting stance for a drawing sword slash. But he had no intention of merely nicking the Leviathan. All things in the universe turned to ash. Flame ran silently along Chu Zihang's Zanpakuto from hilt to tip. It was a pure, searing fire whose sole purpose seemed to be incineration. Flowing blade-like fire, he closed with the Leviathan, which was tumbling back toward the sea with the ice-released giant whale. A streak of fire leaped from his blade, cutting a swath through 100 meters of air and setting the night sky ablaze. Leviathan screamed, a piercing, wounded cry. A thin, fiery line had appeared around its belly. In an instant, that line exploded into a conflagration that consumed the beast. Even though it crashed into the water, the flames did not die. They vaporized seawater around the wound. Chu Zihang hovered in the air, looking down. The technique was called torch. He'd acquired the flowing blade-like fire from a gift package, and with it a terrifying spiritual pressure, and the skill to use it. Seeing the effect, he clicked his tongue with a trace of satisfaction. Hey, what's going on? That's a dragon king. That's my sister. She's been beaten half to death." Among those skimming the water, Xiami gaped at the burning shape below the surface, a chill running down her spine. She was no longer a dragon king. She was a nine-tailed Jinchuriki now. Inside her sealed space, nine-tailed Fenrir whispered, "Sister, which dragon king is that?" Xiami rolled her eyes. "Please, you really don't remember anything, do you? That's the king of ocean and water, the king of the ocean, defeated by fire in his own sea, without even time to cast a spell. Truly." She hesitated, then muttered the only word that fit, "Terrifying." For a moment the sea fell into a strange hush. Apart from wind and waves, Leviathan's pained cries echoed, all eyes fixed on the flames that licked the water. Steam and vapor blurred their vision, but a different emotion burned bright, greed. Everyone suspected the creature beneath the surface was a dragon king. A dragon king's dragon bone cross sold to the system would fetch a sky-high price. The possibility of such a windfall sharpened every gaze. The looks between Lu Mingfei, Chu Zihang, and Caesar grew cold. Those three were the chief obstacles to claiming the dragon bone. The air tightened with unspoken rivalry. Lu Mingfei felt the hairs on his scalp rise under so many hungry stares. He hugged himself. Why is it suddenly so chilly? "Little heavenly maiden, you still want your clothes? Lend them to me for a bit." "Lend you my head? I'm only wearing a slip dress, and it's wet. What will I wear if I strip for you?" Su Xiaochang snapped. Lu Mingfei shrank back and held his tongue. He lowered his head, and his slowly rotating Sharingan Rinnegan picked up something strange under the water. The ocean, bathed in moonlight, looked pitch black, but Lu Mingfei saw dark currents twisting in a vortex, accelerating. "Hey, there's something under the water," he shouted. The crowd followed his gaze and perceived only a forming whirlpool. Only those with deep knowledge, Xiami and her sibling and the Xiao Tang brothers, recognized the truth. "A Nibelungen is opening," Xiami murmured to Fenrir. "Leviathan's blood and bones have used their gate as keys." Nibelungen was a hidden space overlapping the real world, one only dragonkind of high bloodline could construct. Given the system's mission descriptions, it wasn't hard to suspect this Nibelungen belonged to either the Black King or Odin. Xiami felt a sudden unease. After 1,000 years, she might be about to see that father or brother again. The ocean's rotation sped up violently. Water rushed downward as if something was ripping currents from the depths. A vast vortex yawned open, the center hollowed, seawater and ice spiraled down into the abyss. The flaming leviathan was caught in the current and swept toward the seabed. In an instant, it was pulled into the darkness and vanished. Oh no, the Dragonbone Cross. Something down there is taking it. Greed and panic broke out at once. The promise of unimaginable wealth had made people reckless. Those who had been moving outward to escape the maelstrom now dove in, chasing the current and plunging toward the bottom. When they opened their eyes again, the scene had changed. A cyan sky arched above a calm sea. In the center of that expanse rose an isolated island. Strange light fell from the heavens, illuminating ancient trees that formed a dense forest on the island and revealing an arena-like structure circling the grove, reminiscent of an old Roman amphitheater. Along the circular wall were adjacent stone recesses, and within each lay square objects that at a distance looked like stacks of coffins or tombstones. Leviathan was gone. No trace of it remained. The Dragonbone Cross had vanished into whatever lay beneath. The survivors floated in stunned silence, the meaning of the place, and the danger that had just pulled them in, settling over them like a shadow. Chapter 11. Melee and Odin's Suspicion. Most of the people were still floating in the water, but a few had already launched themselves into the air. Flames roared from beneath their feet like jet thrusters. "Is this Avalon? Or rather, Valhalla?" the boy beside Old Tang murmured, staring at the island. "Those stone vaults are full of coffins," he continued. "Inside them are puppets, between human and corpse. They're Odin's Einherjar." Old Tang nodded. "Exact. Leviathan's aura is gone, probably consumed. This place is Odin's Nibelungen." Both brothers had eaten the Mera Mera no Mi. As the former kings of bronze and fire, Norton and Constantine, they could wield flame as if it were part of their bodies. Not far away, Xiami glowed gold in her immortal fox mode. The three met each other's eyes. After a millennium apart, they only inclined their heads slightly. As former Dragon Kings, they were prime contenders for the first kill. Even the S-rank fighters around them only had a few thousand points from bloodline conversions. The three of them each possessed a full 10,000 points, especially Xiami and Fenrir. Fenrir had spent his 10,000 to become a Ninetales. Xiami had spent hers to take on an Asura physique. With both effects stacked and Asura's immortal mode active, Xiami felt she could beat 10 of her strongest selves. With power far beyond a Dragon King in her hands, she saw no reason she wouldn't get the first blow. "Norton, you know I have issues with Odin. He's my target," Xiami said, trying to persuade him. Old Tang glanced at her. "After all these years, you're still this reckless, Yemengade. Times have changed. If you want to kill Odin, you come and take him yourself." "Humph. If I have to, I will," Xiami grumbled, stamping her golden calves. While the two Dragon Kings argued, Chu Zihang stepped forward from the crowd. He moved like a shadow, teleporting into the island and flipping open coffin lids one after another with practiced, precise force, the kind of technique that would make a veteran pallbearer proud. Each coffin he opened lit a pair of golden pupils. The Einherjar, long slumbering, sat up with stiff motions, their terrifying draconic might radiating outward. Chu Zihang ignored them and continued on until he stopped at a particular coffin. "Finally, I found you," he breathed, fingers trembling. Inside was a man wearing an Odin mask, his face obscured, but his clothes matched the set worn on the rainy night 2 years ago. It was unmistakable. Chu Tianjiao, Chu Zihang's father. Chu Zihang's Zanpakuto traced an arc, the Odin mask shattered. Just as Chu Tianjiao's furious golden pupils flared, he closed his eyes and slipped back into sleep. "I'm here, father. Now I'll take you for revenge." Chu Zihang closed the coffin, hoisted it onto his shoulder, and walked out of the vault. Flames licked along his blade as his dark eyes cut across the dozens of golden pupils in the surrounding chambers. Hado number 90, Black Coffin. A black prison descended, swallowing the island. Thousands of blades erupted, space and gravity twisted. When the black coffin faded, everything except Chu Tianjiao lay in ruins, every Einherjar and every coffin shattered to pieces. Half of Odin's accumulation across millennia was gone in an instant. On the other side of the island were Odin's own creations, his son Caesar and the Black King, creatures hatched by Odin. Chu Zihang strode out amid the spray of golden ichor. The rest of the group had only just reached the shore. Whoa, isn't this a bit much?" Shiami gaped at the devastation. Teacher Ye, who had thought only Shiami and Norton were worthy among the heroes, found himself suddenly uncertain. "Hero, you still want those corpses?" Someone in the crowd shouted, one of those who always followed the majority. If Lu Mingfei had already joined Castle College, he would have recognized him as Fingal. Chu Zihang shook his head, and the signal was all the others needed. People swarmed onto the island, racing to salvage the Einherjar. Odin's Einherjar were high-grade mixed bloods. Each corpse started at a selling price of 100 points. The island erupted into a brawl. "This sector is contracted by our Shekihachi family. Anyone who crosses us is an enemy." "Bullshit. The Chen family disagrees. If you've got guts, fight us." "The Secret Party's the largest dragon-slaying group. These Einherjar belong to dragon-slaying resources." "They're mine, Xiami's." "Sorry, Beauty, these corpses are mine, Lu Mingfei's." "Shinra Tensei, Bansho Tenin." Lu Mingfei executed a smooth combo to clear the area, grinning and already planning to sell the corpses. Then a ripple of colorful light came from the sky and washed over him. For no reason, Lu Mingfei suddenly lost all desire for merchandise. "Huh? Why am I selling these corpses? Points are pointless, and even if I bought things, there's no one to give them to." He looked skyward at 45 degrees and began to contemplate the meaning of life. Then two giant hands appeared from nowhere and scooped up all the corpses. "What the hell?" Everyone spun around. Standing on the shore was a nearly 50-meter-tall figure, Cosmos, holding dozens of Einherjar in his hands like a child with toys. He made a peace sign in the direction of the Shekihachi family. Lu Mingfei spat. "So, the system can exchange for Ultraman now? Did Cosmos just use Full Moon Wave to steal corpses?" Cosmos seemed to hear him, paused, scratched his head awkwardly, and offered a sheepish clap. "Cha!" That felt utterly incongruous. Lu Mingfei opened the system interface with a strange expression, hoping to find Tiga and become light too. Splish, splash. Cosmos, apologetic, turned and stepped into the sea. His huge body submerged until only his head remained above the waves. People craned their necks to see what he intended. The water churned. With a dazzling burst of light, Cosmos heaved up something enormous, a giant dragon that looked like a black catfish with rows of eyes on each side of its head. Its belly was swollen. If ripped open, it likely still contained Leviathan's remains. Shiami hovered, tense. "That dragon has a familiar aura. Could it be the black king?" The black catfish was docile, subdued by the full moon wave, but the 2 rows of golden pupils still radiated majesty, greater, perhaps, than Leviathan's. It was the Black King mentioned in the mission, though currently in a juvenile state, more beast than true dragon, its dragon form incomplete. Old Tang frowned. "It is the Black King, but it's lost its Dragon King heart. Only its body is forming. It's not whole." Xiami and Old Tang shot toward the Black King at the same time, and everyone else surged forward as well. From Neon came Yuan Jisheng and Yuan Jinu. The Secret Party sent Angers and Fingal. Factions large and small raced toward the Black King, some for revenge, some to stop rivals, some for missions and points. The melee began. Xiami launched a tailed beast ball that smashed into Cosmos's chest, forcing him to stumble and dropping the Black King back into the ocean. Yuan Jisheng, enraged, drew his Zanpakuto and released its Shikai. "Hyorin Maru, Hyoten Yakaso!" Snowflakes danced and became a curtain of ice, forming thousands of icy shards over the sea. Xiami activated her Asura Nine-Tails form, a towering golden Nine-Tails giant, taller than even Cosmos. She condensed a tailed beast ball in each of her 9 tails, plus 1 in hand. 10 tailed beast balls hurled at the fighters. "Do you have to affect everyone like that?" someone yelled. Lu Mingfei waded across the churned sea, shaken by the shockwaves. He could take no more and erupted. A black Susanoo rose around him. He slapped aside a tailed beast ball with one palm and pushed toward the Black King. Cosmos, buffeted earlier, reacted and used the full moon wave again, forcing Xiami and Lu Mingfei into sage mode. Even while they were affected, the rest were in full frenzy. Angers roared and sprinted across the Black King's back, dragging his Zanpakuto and gouging deep wounds into the beast's hide. He was here to slay a dragon. Fingal trailed with an alchemical iron bucket to collect the blood for sale to the system. Elsewhere, the Shekihachi family clashed with the Chen family, the Gato family, and the Secret Party. The sea and sky filled with the powers of Zanpakuto, devil fruits, and ninjutsu. Ice, fire, Shinso against Busoshoku Haki, Raikiri against Sode no Shirayuki. Chaotic and colorful. The Black King, in agony, even used its risky Gs, 9 infants, but the effect was minimal against the cacophony of attacks. It was a lot of noise with little decisive result. On the edge of the island stood Pompey, patriarch of the Gatto family, a golden-haired playboy whose eyes were wide with disbelief. He stared at the chaos unfolding before him. "How is this possible?" he muttered. Their geomancy was nowhere near this powerful before. Did the system really make them this strong? Pompey, Odin, king of sky and wind, felt something else, unease. He had refused to activate the system from the start. He'd spotted the system's sinister intent and clicked X. He'd come along with the main group to seize an opportunity, to devour the kings of bronze and fire and the king of earth and mountain and further his own plans. He'd even let his Valhalla be destroyed to grab that chance. But the situation had escalated beyond his calculations. "No, something's wrong," he said inwardly. "That system must have been created by the Black King. I nurtured its egg until now, but its spirit, its true egg, is somewhere unknown, pulling the strings. It wants to trick me, to coax me into giving up my authority." He watched Xiami and Old Tang fighting and felt his chance slipping. His hunger flared again, shifting his strategy. "I can't take them on directly yet," he thought. "I'll devour the Black King's physical body first, the Leviathan it swallowed. Then I'll take them." Chapter 516, Devouring the Black King. The Sea of Nibelungen alternated between frozen sheets of black ice and rivers of scorching flame. Under that clash of extremes, the whole world seemed to shift color with every breath. The sky was no less absurd. Tailed beast balls streaked and detonated like a battery of missiles, while golden wheel reincarnation blasts shattered the heavens for miles. Cosmos Ultraman, who had stunned everyone earlier, was reduced to radiating full moon waves across the battlefield in a vain attempt at peacemaking. Still, the combatants remained locked in fierce conflict. Landslides and tsunamis churned from the wreckage of the fight. Nibelungen itself trembled, on the verge of collapse. At the center of that ruin lay the Black King, suffering the worst of it. Odin had nurtured the creature in the Arctic for years. The ocean was its hunting ground. It had not yet fully matured or gained true sentience, but it was still a Black King. Nidhogg's blood ran in its veins. If it wished, it could have spawned multiple crowned dragons of Dragon King rank. Instead, it writhed in the overlapping ice and fire, torn and bleeding. It even used a high-risk word spell, 9 infants, to launch a last-ditch tailed beast ball, but the blast was only a single, doomed shot. Wounded and exhausted, the Black King was slowly being drained and was growing close to death. No one noticed that Pompey, who had been lingering on the shoreline, had shifted into a godly figure clad in dark gold armor, a blue cloak snapping behind him. He stepped forward toward the Black King. Time seemed to freeze for a breath. That was Odin using a time-warping incantation. By the time Lu Mingfei and the others could react, Odin, Gungnir in hand, was already on the Black King's skull. He drove the inescapable spear through the beast's head, splitting the bone open, then half-squatted and plunged his hand into the cavity. The Black King's blood, more like a wellspring of dragon-blooded genes, gushed into his palm, and Odin drank it down. It went more easily than he had expected. The Black King offered almost no resistance as its essence was consumed. The supreme authority within it merged into Odin along with the blood. For an instant he glimpsed the edge of a supreme throne and felt his body tremble. He had schemed for 1,000 years. Now he was finally about to leap free of fate's chessboard. It was only a pity the Black King hadn't finished growing. Its power was therefore limited. Odin could not seize the full potential of a completed supreme being. "Odin!" someone shouted. Xiami, glittering with golden light in the sky, was the first to notice. She had been the most obsessed with the Black King. After getting a taste of what the system could award, her hunger for points had become insatiable. "He's eating the Black King's flesh and blood. Stop him! Stop everyone!" She dodged a backhand from Lu Mingfei and slipped through a tide of fire from the Norton brothers, surging toward the Black King. Her tall, 9-tailed form whipped up waves that tore after her. Others followed in pursuit. Chu Zihang, who had been trying to stay out of the fray, sharpened instantly. He handed the coffin with Chu Tianjiao's body to Angers for safekeeping, drew his Zanpakuto, released Shikai, and launched himself after Odin. With so many of them converging, even a fully grown Black King would have broken a sweat. Odin, though, refused to yield. He roared and began to play the sympathy card. "Sister, my sister, the great Earth and Mountain King, Jormungandr," he called, voice thick. "It's been 1,000 years. Seeing you now, you've even grown 9 tails. My, what a surprise, cough, cough." The rambling, petulant tone was not the dignity of a dragon king, but the lechery of the old Pompeii family head. "And Norton, Constantine, my brothers, time's erosion does nothing to your greatness. But why have you broken into my Nibelungen and made such a mess? We may have ancient grievances, but why do you do this?" He wore the part of the wronged sibling so badly it almost looked sincere. Xiaomi paused long enough to study him. The Odin she remembered had not been like this. Still, seeing the Black King shrinking under Odin's hands, she spat, grabbed, and answered him. "Don't lie. You hid the Black King's egg here to hatch. Were we supposed to stand by and let you scheme?" The Norton brothers surged together. Lu Mingfei and Cosmos Ultraman followed more leisurely. Odin's emotional theatrics hadn't worked on everyone. He turned his attack toward Cosmos. "Ultraman, good Ultraman, are you Uesugi Eri of the Sheki Hachi family?" he blurted. "You don't know? Your family head, Kikumasamune, is a despicable villain. He's Herzog's shadow warrior. He means to betray you." Eri froze for a split second. She guided Cosmos a few steps forward, just enough to block Xiaomi and Norton from closing. Odin's eyes brightened. He started pouring out the whole conspiracy. Herzog's 1,000-year machination, the hidden strings he'd pulled. He laid out the entire scheme in breathless detail, convinced this reveal would buy him an ally. Eri listened. She gave a single nod and a thumbs up, and then stepped aside to let Shami and the Nortons through. "What?" Odin sputtered, baffled. He flung Gungnir at Shami. The spear smashed into her and sent her flying 100 meters. Then he invoked a word spell, Indra's Wrath, to block the Nortons. At the same time, he kept pushing, voice straining. "Family head Wesugi, see, I told you. I'm on your side after revealing Herzog's truth. Help me since I helped you." Odin's dignity was gone. He was a toady. But Eri remained unmoved. Yuan Jisheng, who had just arrived, called out to explain. "Eri sometimes transforms at home to train her full moon wave. She got Kikumasamune to confess. After he got hit once, he sobbed out everything. We already took Herzog down." Odin's face fell. This intelligence was too late. He had presented Herzog as the mastermind, but Herzog was already slain and his plans exposed. Odin had no answer. Ultraman's brief, private training and their capture of Herzog had undercut his entire gambit. Meanwhile, Xiami, who had borne Gungnir's blow, had paid a price. One of her tails was gone. She waded through the water, furious. The Norton brothers had weathered Indra's Wrath's spherical lightning and been thrown back, but were not finished. Odin's thoughts raced. He had already consumed roughly 2/3 of the Black King. If he could finish devouring it, a portion of that supreme being's power would fall into his hands. He would be reborn as a new supreme force, strong enough to overturn the chessboard with these chaotic pretenders standing before him. He needed time, and he would do whatever it took to buy it. Chapter 517, Mission Ended. Odin. Someone else swooped in from a distance. Odin recognized him, the young man who had split Leviathan with a single strike, Chu Zihang. With one stroke, he forced Xiami and Norton back and now faced Odin alone. "Well done, young man. You look familiar. Have we met before?" Odin greeted, taking the initiative to be affable. He couldn't quite place where he'd seen this person. To him, ordinary half-breeds were expendable resources. Chu Zihang let his Zanpakuto hum, his tone calm and unhurried. "I've been looking for you for years, Odin." "Oh, what a pity we didn't meet sooner then." Odin projected his voice so everyone could hear, putting on a show. "Listen to me. You, all of you, are the finest humans I've ever seen. Do you see this supreme Black King? It has fallen. This means a new era has begun, and we will be the gods of that era. Children, why keep fighting? Join me. I can grant any wish and lead you to godhood." His cloak fluttered, majestic and proud. Chu Zihang only looked colder. "Godhood isn't what I want. There's just one thing. And what is that? I can help you." Odin's confidence never wavered. Chu Zihang rotated his blade. "To kill you." He had been hunting Odin for 2 years. 2 years ago, a man had stood with his back to a Maybach on an overpass and let a boy escape. That boy had returned, now a blade in hand, ready to use its flames to incinerate Odin. Odin showed no anger. He seemed almost amused. I wanted to help you, yet you want to kill me? Why? Do you remember that rainy night 2 years ago, the Maybach on the bridge? Chu Zihang said patiently. Odin fell silent. So the child who got away was you. He had let Chu Zihang go at the time, never expecting him to rise so far. He looked around. You've rescued your father now, haven't you? I spared your life then. Let's call it even. Odin tried to smooth things over, but the flames along Chu Zihang's blade flared higher. Gods are for gods. Your life is mine. Understanding dawned on Odin. What a pity. But can you do it, Chu Zihang? You talk too much to your enemies, and now it's too late. He abruptly withdrew his hand from the Black King's head. In an instant, the Black King's vast, catfish-like body withered, its flesh seeming drained. Odin's expression turned proud, exultant. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. His blood sang, his element sense skyrocketed, and the world in his sight shrank to nothing. Ah, supreme mighty power, he breathed. Odin hovered over the Black King's corpse as a mass of white filaments surged from his body, spreading across the sea like a nest. Dragonization! It's over. He swallowed the Black King and is becoming a supreme. Xiami's face shifted as she watched, already calculating whether he'd surpass her once transformed. Never mind, he swallowed the Black King. Kill him, sell him, and we'll still get the same points. Xiami was eager, but Chu Zihang remained rooted directly before Odin. He had no intention of stopping the transformation, only of finishing Odin. He tightened his grip and intoned slowly, deeply. Bankai, Zanka no Tachi. Boom. Boundless flames erupted, pouring from the blade into the sky. The arm holding it scorched crimson. His sleeve turned to ash in an instant. Heat waves rolled across the Nibelungen. The flames attached to the Zanpakuto burned with temperatures rivaling a star's core. Oh my god, Senior is using his ultimate move. Everyone run! Lu Mingfei, watching from the edge, dispelled his Susanoo and fled with Su Xiaoqiang. Anyone who didn't run was a fool. The Nibelung groaned and began to collapse around Chu Zihang, and the collapse spread fast. In less than half a minute, the entire ship might be incinerated. That one Bankai could have burned the Pacific dry. Odin, standing directly opposite, could only think in disbelief. What kind of ghostly power is this? He had no idea how to fight it. He instantly regretted not binding a system earlier. But he believed he still had a way out. Don't underestimate a supreme's power, Chu Zihang, Odin said coldly. The Black King's crown comes from the world. Even if you're strong, when the world line restarts, you'll have nothing. With no hesitation, Odin restarted the world line. Before he swallowed the Black King, he could tweak the timeline slightly by meddling with causality, limited alterations that couldn't touch Dragon Kings of the same rank and left loopholes. But with the Black King's authority now, his restart would be complete. In Odin's eyes, the world flowed backward. People vanished from the Nibelungen. The Yamal retreated to its birth. Odin rewound time to the moment he could bind the system. Laughing, he looked at the dialogue box and thought, good, this time I'll bind the system and then go to the Nibelungen to sell the Black King in advance. Let's see who can overturn my plan. He clicked yes to bind the system in exchange for Chu Zihang's blade. Nothing responded. What's going on? Odin clicked again, faster and faster, fingers a blur. The dialogue didn't react. Ha, stop clicking. Even clicking 10,000 times won't help. A childish voice called out nearby. Odin froze, turned, and saw a boy in exquisite noble clothes sitting on a suddenly appeared chair, sipping coffee that had materialized with steam curling from the cup. Are you the one who created this system? Odin narrowed his eyes. No, of course not. I don't possess that ability, the boy, Lu Mingze, replied with an elegant smile. I merely received some gifts, then came to punish the traitor. His gaze sharpened. Only those who reach heaven and then fall hard to hell suffer the best punishment. Traitor! You! Odin's pupils constricted. Impossible! Are you saying it was all an illusion? No way. Impossible. Why impossible? The coffee cup in Lu Mingze's hand transformed into a Zanpakuto. What made you think it wasn't an illusion, Odin? Shatter, Kyoka Suigetsu. The illusion broke. The world Odin had been watching collapsed, returning to the Nibelungen. Chu Zihang, Bankai active, still floated aloft. The Black King, who had been drained in Odin's vision, was now vividly afloat on the sea. Everywhere, people stared in shock, despair, or furious disbelief. Everyone was under an illusion. When did you cast it? Odin's heart dropped. Lumingzi was no longer beside him, but his voice echoed. Remember those people aboard the ship with Zanpakuto? I was one of them. Lumingzi's quiet laugh rang in Odin's ears. He had used Kyoka Suigetsu on the Yamal, planting the seed of illusion in everyone so they would act out Odin's ascension to godhood. Now the illusion ended, and Odin had become the laughingstock. 1,000 years of planning. I refuse to accept this, Odin said bitterly. But to lose to another supreme, I wouldn't regret death. Ha ha, I'm not one to soil my own hands. Look up, Odin, and meet your fate, Lu Ming's voice said. Odin looked up. Chu Zihang's blazing sword descended and swallowed him in flame. He disintegrated to ash. Ding! Congratulations, mission complete, end. At the moment the Nibelungen was destroyed, everyone received the system notifications simultaneously. That was quite a spectacle, Leon said, hovering above the Arctic Ocean. He'd watched the whole fight. Those seeking revenge had gotten it. Those with missions had earned their points. He himself had collected the bloodlines of every Dragon King. It was a perfect ending for everyone. Arii sold the White King's bloodline to the system a few days ago, he noted. Now the Black King's is acquired as well. But the Black King, Lu Mingfei, and Lu Mingze are like the Holy Trinity. Their three bloodlines combined form the world's complete supreme power. Excellent. Everything's gathered. Satisfied, Leon found a quiet place and began researching the genes. A few days later, when the M-body in the universe successfully became the world consciousness once more, Leon decided it was time to leave. He was about to activate his traversal ability when he froze. Someone bought Lei Jieduo's trial again? He murmured. All of them bought by Arii. Over 100 copies? Over 100 copies meant over 100,000 points. Arii had received 100,000 points from selling the White King, and the Black King's sale had been shared. She'd used all her points to buy trials. She's already Cosmos Ultraman and still buying trials. Does she want to become Lei Jieduo? Leon wondered. Curious, he decided to see Arii one last time before he left. Chapter 518, More Than 100 Trials. Odin's fall in the Arctic Ocean marked the beginning of a new world order. Chu Zihang's sword, Lu Mingfei's eyes, and other chaotic, terrifying powers had shown everyone that the System Mall's limits could unmake heaven and earth. New factions and forces sprang up and organized themselves. The Dragon Clan split from within. The Secret Party, tied by dragon blood, fractured. The God of Death faction, the Shadow faction, the Pirate faction. Every power system carved out its own camps. Even the magic users seriously discussed abducting the author Rowling to found their own Hogwarts. The writers and publishers of the three great manga had long since been hauled back to the Shekihachi family building and locked in a dark room to rush their manuscripts. The outside world was in upheaval. None of it touched Uesugi Eri. She still lived in her old room, only now the layers of airtight, blast-proof doors had been removed. After becoming an Ultraman, Eri had changed from a small monster into an agent of justice. Her brother no longer had to worry about her bloodline running wild. The other family heads no longer watched her with veiled fear. She was no longer strictly guarded. If anything, she had taken on some of Tsukuyomi's true bearing. Strangers arrived every day to bow and report. Even when she kept her gaze glued to an Ultraman show on the screen, they carefully articulated every line as they spoke. None of that mattered to her. She neither understood the Shekihachi family nor wanted to. The only person in that building who mattered was her brother, Yuan Jisheng, and he was more than capable. He didn't need her worrying over him. Besides, when they had returned from the Arctic, he'd been quietly scheming to sell sunscreen on a beach in France, and Eri had taken that as a sign he might leave soon. Would it be appropriate for her to keep living here if he went? Her hands shook as she opened the system interface. Her posture straightened. She tapped the screen and bought the Lei Jieduo Ultraman trial. After the purchase, her tension eased a little. She sat back with her knees splayed in a duck-sitting posture, clutching an Ultraman figure and waiting with a mix of anticipation and anxiety for Leiji Duo to appear. Nothing happened. No beam of light, no giant hand lifting her. The room stayed quiet. Sunlight slanted through the window. The Ultraman and little monster drawings she'd made on the glass with colored pens looked cheerful, but the light she wanted never arrived. Panic prickled. She realized she didn't even know where to find Leiji Duo anymore, or whether the presence that had lived in her, taught her to run down streets, and shown her where to buy 5-spice fried rice, had any other name at all. For a moment, the world felt foreign, because she couldn't find the one who had introduced her to it. She opened the Leiji Duo trial page again and clicked purchase, and again and again. Her tapping sped up like someone playing a fighting game, convinced that faster inputs would bring the best result. Her balance drained by thousands each time until finally the interface blinked, insufficient balance. She lowered her arms and stared, bewildered, at the more than 100 trial products lined up on the page. This was her last chance to summon Leiji Duo. Now she had no points left. Eri hugged her Rilakkuma plush and waited. On the TV, an episode of Tiga fighting Gadanothor flickered. Once, when she saw kids turn to light and fight with Tiga, she had been terrified. Now she felt like the light too. She could imagine raising a transformation device and joining in the fight. But the Tiga beaming onto the screen answered the brave children. Leiji Duo had not come for her. It felt as if he had left Earth, abandoning his human host. Space folded, and Lion appeared before her. He found Eri, with her head bowed, her red hair spilling like a curtain over the Rilakkuma. Ultraman and monster figures were scattered around. Jointed toys linked into a little train, others arranged in a circle around her, some tucked under a shared blanket on the princess bed. The old rubber ducks and Barbie dolls had been pushed aside. For a human host, Lion thought wryly, the scene was a little too immersive. With all these figures laid out, you aren't planning to dream about Ultraman and monsters being one big family at night, are you, Eri? He teased. Eri looked up. Her deep red eyes flickered to life like cut gems, but she said nothing. She only stared. Lion watched her for a moment, then shook his head. I'm not linked with you right now, so I can't read your mind. I don't know what 100 things are running through your head. She nodded and pushed herself upright on her slender legs. She picked up a notebook, wrote quickly, and held it up. Leiji Duo, where did you go? I walked around the Earth, Lion answered. He laughed faintly. Why write? You used to speak in the illusion. Why go back to paper? Eri's voice had been pleasant when they shared the illusion, but 10 years of the habit of writing didn't vanish overnight. She nodded and put the notebook down, then cocked her head in puzzlement. What is the illusion? It's where you took your trial before. The world I shaped with my mind, Leon explained. So that place was fake, Eri asked, trying to reconcile things. You can't say that. That illusion was built by me, but your experiences there were real. Eri chewed on that and then, hesitantly, are the other worlds you mentioned also fake? Some are real. Lion's fingers traced a line of light in the air. I'm going to the next world. He glanced at the display of trial purchases. You bought a lot of trials, Eri, but I can't hand over 100 cosmic trials, so we'll do this properly. Now we begin the true Leiji Duo trial. He prepared to activate the illusion. If she passed, she would be Leiji Duo's human host. If not, everything might change. Chapter 519, Zhang asked, Are you my master? Leiji Duo's power in the dragon race world was unsurprisingly unrivaled both on Earth and in the heavens. But Eri did not nod. Instead, she stepped forward, anxious. Leiji Duo, will you come back after you leave? She asked. I won't come back. But it's not really leaving, he replied. Leon rarely saw Eri show anxiety. In truth, she rarely showed emotion at all. Only in the company of a few people did her eyes brighten. Leon suddenly understood why she had bought more than 100 trial passes. Not to grow stronger, but to find him. She had spent points worth a white king and a tenth of a black king, resources most would never squander, but to Eri it had been worth every point. She didn't seem to feel the cost. Instead, she only looked at Leon nervously, worried that her Leiji Duo would not return. The months in the illusion had felt unreal, but to Eri, they had been the happiest months of her life. Leon remembered leading her around the simulated world. Every new sight prompted her to buy postcards and keep careful notes. After trying five-eyed fried rice once, she devoured it with an obsession. Ordinary food was a revelation to her, and she finally wore herself out after a month. Sometimes she would even transform in the middle of eating. Even in battle, she protected the little bowl in her palm, finishing her meal as soon as the fight ended. Those months had matured Arii. She had grown independent enough not to need his constant command. But perhaps, Leon thought, he who had accompanied her through that strange season had also become indispensable to her. "So that's it," Leon said. "You want to leave with me?" Arii nodded without hesitation. "And what about your brother?" "He's going to France to sell sunscreen." Leon blinked. "The tortoise is really going to sell sunscreen this time. The Shekihachi family doesn't mind?" "What is the Shekihachi family?" Arii asked blankly. "You really don't know much about your own world, do you? Aren't you going to look after it again? You promised you would protect it." "But this world isn't in danger anymore," Aries said after a moment. Then she added thoughtfully, "Because Legier Duo is leaving, there will definitely be no danger." For once she sounded clever. Leon hesitated. Then Arii looked at him and said, "Legier Duo said my world doesn't have Naruto, nor Seiya and Athena. Can you take me to see them?" Her eyes sparkled. She truly was looking forward to it. Leon thought back to why she had always wanted to run away from home. She had imagined the outside world was full of the characters from anime, so she wanted to skip school and check. Now she knew her worldview had been wrong, and she wanted to see more. Leon had no real reason to refuse. Taking Arii along would be like bringing a docile, well-behaved kitten. She seemed to sense his wavering and added, "I'll be obedient." After a moment's thought, Leon smiled. "All right then." He reached out and stroked Arii's head. It was soft and smooth, just like a kitten's. "You've bought so many trial passes. Think of this as taking you to other worlds for trials." Arii beamed and let him keep stroking her. When he withdrew his hand, she tiptoed across the tatami, scampered once around the kotatsu, and gathered up her dolls as she went. Then she opened the hearth, took out a suitcase, and carefully packed each toy inside. She closed the case, carried it to Leon, and said simply, "Let's go." It was obvious she had been planning this for a long time. She didn't bring many clothes. Her most precious possessions were the pile of dolls she tucked into the suitcase, always ready to run away and wander the world. "Don't you need to tell your brother?" Leon asked. Arii shook her head and pointed to the TV. "Kaguya-hime will tell him." "All right then, let's go now," Leon said with a wry chuckle. He took Arii's wrist and activated his crossing ability. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Partners of justice have no set destination," Leon replied. "We go wherever we end up." The two of them vanished from the Genji Heavy Industries building. Yuan Jisheng, who had just learned from Kaguya-hime that his sister had been spirited away by the Ghostfire youth, beat his chest and stamped his feet in outrage. His sister only suppressed a smile and teased that it might be good for the two of them to go sell sunscreen together. Where would Legier Duo take her? Arii wondered with bright anticipation before she fell unconscious. When she woke, the first thing she saw was a familiar figure, a heroic king, long golden hair coiled behind her head, emerald eyes full of majesty and righteousness. She wore heavy breastplate and a thick blue battle skirt, yet there was no strain in her bearing. "I ask of you, are you my master?" the golden-haired warrior asked, her long sword held steady. Arii froze for a moment, then her eyes lit up like a child delighted to see an animal on the street, quiet joy rather than a childish scream. She studied the warrior carefully, shifting from foot to foot, looking left and right. Master?" the warrior repeated, a little unsure. Arii was at a loss for words. She had awoken to find the King of Knights from the Fate Tales, Altria, standing before her. She was simply overjoyed to see her favorite character. The scene broadened. They stood in a large cathedral. Altria was on a raised platform, a heroic spirit summoning circle at her feet. Beside her were Irisveal, silver-haired and serene, and the grim-faced Emiya Kiritsugu. And Legier Duo, Leon, stood behind Arii. "Legier Duo?" Arii looked to him for an explanation. "Call me Leon from now on," he replied. "It's a long story, but the short version is—" He turned to Altria. "Arii is not your master yet," he said, "but she will be soon." As he spoke, the command seals on Emiya Kiritsugu's hand began to fade and transfer, drifting across to Ari's palm. She raised the back of her hand and looked around in stunned wonder as fantasy became reality. Finally, she held up her left hand toward Altria and with earnest conviction declared, "I am your master, Saber." Chapter 520, Holy Grail War. Excalibur! Why so cool? Big Sister is amazing. Under frost-laden bare trees, Ilya's Miko outfit trailed in the snow as she gripped the sword of promised victory with both hands and swung it out. A sharp arc of swordlight cut through falling flakes. Ilya danced through the snow like a swordswoman. Beside her, Ilya's counterpart, little Ilyasville, no higher than the woman's waist, jumped and clapped, squealing with delight. A dozen meters away, Altria looked helpless. "Master," she murmured. King Arthur had no idea how to handle her master. From the moment she'd been summoned, the red-haired girl had inspected her like a curiosity, studying the patterns on her armor, the stitching of her battle skirt, even the way the sword sat at her hip. The girl's eyes were wide and innocent, with nothing but pure wonder. Exactly the sort of heart that ought to match a servant like Altria. Still, the girl's curiosity was unrelenting. She'd even asked to borrow the sword of promised victory. Altria had refused on principle. A warrior's sword never leaves her side, and worried she might have offended her master. Then, as the girl drew back with a regretful sigh, the young man standing next to her casually glanced at the sword, and in the same instant conjured a blade from thin air. Altria felt the ley lines tremble. A vast, ancient magic flared, alchemy or sorcery she could not name, and a noble phantasm identical to her own was formed. She watched, stunned, as the child gleefully took the forged sword, ran into the snow, and cried, "Excalibur! Incredible! Magus, what should I call you?" Altria asked Mr. Lion, still trying to process it. The knowledge she'd gained on being summoned told her that there were no magi of the old school here, only sorcerers. Whatever this man had done, though, was beyond a mere sorcerer's craft. "You can call me Mr. Lion," he said with a nod. "Forgive my impertinence, Mr. Lion, but with magic like that, are you participating in the Holy Grail War?" Altria asked, glancing at Ilya. "The child doesn't seem to have a strong wish. You must be the true master." Mr. Lion's gaze drifted toward her. In that look, Altria felt exposed, down to the most embarrassing memories, like the day her ahoge had been cut off while she practiced swordsmanship as a child. She turned slightly, uneasy. "So, is that it?" she asked finally, unable to press further. The man unnerved her. He smiled faintly and began to speak. "Ilya and I are merely passing travelers. We should be grateful to Emiya Kiritsugu and his wife for their hospitality." He turned toward Emiya Kiritsugu. "We made a deal. I'll help him achieve his wish, and he gives me his spot in the Holy Grail War." Altria startled. Emiya Kiritsugu had stood at the edge of the clearing all this while, his expression immovable, his black trench coat fluttering in the snow. He looked older by dozen battles, a cigarette clamped between his lips. "My wish," he said sullenly when asked, "is for the world to be at peace. No more wars, no more misfortune." He hadn't wanted to say it aloud, but with Mr. Lion there to finish his thoughts, there was no choice. A few hours earlier, a stranger had appeared in his home alongside a witch. The man had called him by a name that carried no respect, and Kiritsugu's first instinct had been to kill the intruder. Anger and a killing intent rose, and then everything went black. He woke to find himself in bed with his worried wife and daughter watching over him, and that same stranger was tending his wounds. When Kiritsugu's fury flared again, he blacked out once more. Waking the second time brought a brutal realization. The man who'd intruded was a dangerous presence who seemed to injure Kiritsugu further whenever his anger toward him rose. Resisting had only brought more wounds. Kiritsugu had given up trying to fight the effect and instead planned to win by other means, by killing other masters and taking their command seals. Now, hearing the stranger offer help with his wish, Kiritsugu's suspicion warred with a thread of hope. He asked quietly, "Are you truly prepared to grant that wish?" "Was that not the agreement?" Mr. Lion replied calmly. "But Kiritsugu and Saber, I must warn you, your expectations of the Holy Grail may end in great disappointment." "Disappointment?" Altria frowned. "When I was summoned, I was told the Grail grants the victor's wish. How could that fail?" Kiritsugu's face tightened as he quietly considered possibilities. Sensing the tension, Irisfiel, hair silver in the dusk, let out a shaky laugh and interjected, why don't we make dinner first? After that, we can go over information on the other masters. Eat? Altria's scowl softened at the hint of normality. Her eyes flicked to Irisfiel, relieved. But Mr. Lion cut across the mood. No need. Dinner can wait. Why postpone it? Altria demanded, feeling that the man was utterly maddening. If you're going to make a wish, if you're participating in the war, then I'm not prepared, but Ilya is curious. Let her try. As for your wish, Mr. Lion said, turning his calm attention to Kiritsugu, it can be fulfilled today. Today? Irisfiel echoed, bewildered. Today, Mr. Lion repeated softly. We go to Fuyuki City. He looked down at the little girl who had been swinging the newly forged sword and called, Come, Ilya, it's time to go. Ilya, still buzzing from her attempt at Excalibur, nodded, slipped the sword away, and trotted back. Mr. Lion patted her head, opened a small mystic portal with a gesture, and stepped through.